Chapter 1137. Just as a madman once said, "What's so great about a car? It's just an engine, for people, and a metal box." How wise is that? Anyway, I heard that his car company is very popular, and I haven't heard of any major problems. Similarly, what is a person? 2 arms and 2 legs at home, a body full of carbohydrates. If you know the cause, you can treat it casually. Didn't you see that the calf came back to life? As long as the calf can come back to life, it proves that my theory is correct and must be carried forward. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng's heart calmed down. Xiaohu had an accidental fracture, so you also saw that bone fragment. If you don't stop the bleeding, he might really die. If he loses too much blood, find someone with the same blood type to give him a blood transfusion and he'll come back to life. Do you still need to ask? Zhang Feng seriously doubted whether he was playing the lute to a cow. Discussing blood types with the ancients was purely because he had nothing better to do. Sure enough, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong both blushed and stared at Zhang Feng as if they wanted to swallow him whole. Zhang Feng hurriedly begged for mercy, saying that he had just finished the operation to treat Xiaohu's injuries and had exhausted a lot of energy. Only then did he succeed in fooling the 2 people. However, it was clear that Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong had no intention of letting Zhang Feng go. After Zhang Feng lay back on the recliner, the 2 lit up their cigarettes and sat on either side of Zhang Feng. They asked, "Feng Zi, your medical skills were all taught by your master. Then tell us, other than being able to set bones, change blood, and take lives, what else can you do?" Zhang Feng knew that the 2 of them would not let him go. Smoking, he made up a lie. "My master said that learning these things is only a small path after all. There are many things that my teacher is not willing to teach me. He said that life is full of troubles, and it's enough as long as I don't get cheated by others. The more I learn, the more trouble I will have. He hopes that I can live a simple life. Heaven and earth have their own rules, and forceful interference will only add new troubles. It's better to let nature take its course. I understand. I've seen my master perform these things before, and I'm just copying them." Zhang Feng had no choice but to brag to the psychiatrist during his military training and set up a high ranking for him. Yu Qigong was a bit disappointed that Zhang Feng didn't live up to his expectations. He was a bit depressed, but he couldn't say a word as he looked at Zhang Feng for a long time. In his opinion, Zhang Feng had such a miraculous master every day, and he only learned a little about medicine. Which one of these skills wasn't earth-shattering? However, Yu Qigong looked at Zhang Feng for a long time and didn't know who to blame, so he put down his hand. After all, Zhang Feng had already done a good job, and as he said, his master had only taught him for a very short period of time. It was already enough for him to learn so much. Moreover, it was already good enough that he could change the legs and blood of Niu Jian, who after seeing it a few times. If it was another person, they would probably be scared to death at this time. How would they dare to do such a thing? Chen Yaojin rolled his eyes and said with a laugh, "Feng Zi is so capable. As his older brother, I'll be blessed in the future. If I have any difficulties in the future, I'll look for you. Old Yu, this is Feng Zi's secret. Why do you care where Feng Zi learned it from? A blind cat, a dead cat, a cat that catches mice is a good cat. Don't you understand this principle?" Chen Yaojin repeatedly gave Yu Qigong a look, then hugged Zhang Feng and said with a laugh, "Let's not talk about these annoying things. Let me show you something good. Old Niu told me to give it to you." Chen Yaojin's mind was more lively. It wasn't that he was careless. If Chen Yaojin was really careless, then you were the real idiot. Which person who could become a duke wasn't a shrewd person? However, compared to Chen Yaojin's simple-mindedness, Yu Qigong was somewhat depressed. He walked out of Zhang Feng's small wooden house and smoked while squatting at the door to study the strange blood transfusion equipment. The equipment was very simple. In fact, it was just a piece of fish intestine, 2 hollow fish bones, and a mule whose leg had just been broken by her. Yu Qigong couldn't help but be deeply shocked. However, at this time, looking at the 2 laughing and joking around, Yu Qigong couldn't help but smile. When a person became younger, their heart also seemed to become younger. Zhang Feng, who was 34 or 35 years old mentally, and a person who was actually close to 30 years old. However, The strange thing was that Zhang Feng didn't have any real generation gap. Compared to Yu Qigong, Zhang Feng preferred to spend time with Old Chen. Old Chen's thoughts were very simple and he was a very good person. This made Zhang Feng very happy. After all, every time he spent time with Old Chen, his mind and body would be extremely relaxed. Zhang Feng couldn't remember when was the last time he laughed and joked around without hiding anything. Maybe it was a month ago? Chapter 1138. Since he had nothing to do, Zhang Feng curiously asked, "Old Chen, do you know what's going on with those Turkic slaves in the army? They seem to have just been sent here." "You can even tell?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "I'm not a fool. I really can't tell. What do you take your brother for?" Chen Yaojin laughed and told Wang Zhong the whole story. During this period of time, more and more soldiers had been garrisoned in the Lanzhou and Liangzhou camps, even extending to Chiaotzi City. However, with more people, more military supplies were transported. This also attracted the attention of the Turks who were pacing back and forth on the east side of the hall. They were also short on supplies, and they didn't even have enough to eat. When they saw a long line of caravans, there were naturally people who were willing to take the risk. The ones who were caught were a group of Turkic scouts. Half a month ago, according to Old Chen, his camp had been ambushed by these people. After sacrificing more than 30 people, Old Chen's subordinates had finally managed to kill these Turks. Even so, these people were still lying on the salt bags like mad dogs, crazily eating the salt one handful after another. They also lacked salt. Chen Yaojin had kept the price of salt at 1 yuan per caddy. Moreover, there was a price but no supply. How could this not cause resentment among the people? Chen Yaojin opened up the supply of vinegar cloth and a small amount of fine salt to eat. At least it had the taste of salt. Anyway, the common people usually didn't eat much salt. The purpose of this was to strictly prevent the Turks and the streamers from causing trouble and spreading this precious thing. After all, the salt sold to the public at this time was poisonous. This was something only a few of them knew. If the matter of these years was spread out, it would be big trouble. Therefore, Qing Yaojin did not care about anything else and kept these people here. In this regard, Zhang Feng also faintly felt that the Turks lacked salt. The Turks' geographical location was very special, belonging to the high-altitude plateau. No one could last more than a few days in a high-intensity activity. Moreover, the situation was unclear at this time, and the Tang army had dispatched so many troops to sneak here. In order to survive, these Turks were originally good at long-range raids, so they had evil thoughts. They took the risk out of desperation, and when Qing Yaojin and the others were not paying attention, they were able to take advantage of the loophole. However, they didn't expect that this group of caravans was actually the transport team of the officials of the Tang dynasty. Those who could escort the officials were all good men in the army. In this battle, Qing Yaojin lost more than 30 people. One could imagine how tragic this battle was. According to Qing Yaojin, only a few of the 7 Turkic fishermen were left alive. They even knew how to open a trap and brought them back. As for the rest, regardless of whether they were crippled or not, they were all killed. Thus, the scene that her husband saw in the camp happened. Living in a peaceful world, when had she ever experienced such a tragedy? That was more than 100 fresh lives. Just because of a mouthful of salt and a mouthful of rice, they lost their lives. In Zhang Feng's view, this was simply inconceivable. For him, not to mention a gene of salt, even 2,000 gene of 1 yuan was only worth 2 to 3,000 yuan in the future. Even if it broke the sky, it would only be worth 4 to 5,000 yuan. More than 100 Turks were all killed for this thing. Zhang Feng didn't think that the other dozen people who fell into Old Chen's hands could survive safely. After all, Old Chen was only a businessman. The real power to execute these people was in the hands of the 2 great generals in the army. However, even if one's head was cut off, it would only be a scar the size of a bowl. Why did rich people cherish their lives more? As the saying goes, the richer you are, the more afraid of death. This was an eternal truth. Poor people lived a life of suffering. If they couldn't even bear this, there was no need for them to live. They couldn't stay in the house anymore. There were 2 big chimneys. God knew how long they had been smoking in the house. At this time, after smoking 2 cigarettes, Zhang Feng was so choked that he couldn't speak. He hurriedly went out to see the sun. He simply lay on the grass and looked up at the clouds in the sky that came and went in a hurry. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong smiled and lay on the grass and looked up at the sky like Zhang Feng. The sky around Xian in the Tang dynasty was very pure. There wasn't a trace of pollution. It was as pure as a newborn baby. The sky was so blue that it was a little dark. The clouds in the sky were like a bunch of cotton ready to fight in the air. When the wind blew, the clouds would ripple. Looking at the deep black, there was a sense of vicissitudes of mystery in the dark blue. Unlike in the future, it was extremely rare to see a trace of blue in the sky of Xi. Not to mention Xi, and it was also extremely rare to see such a pure blue sky in other places. Chapter 1139. The weather at the beginning of August was very strange. From morning to night, it was extremely cold. Especially at night, it was as cold as winter. However, at noon it was very hot. It was even hotter than summer. At this moment, the entire academy was filled with people who were moving construction materials in a hurry. At this time, when he looked around, he saw a group of men with their crotches wrapped in cloth. They were carrying construction materials or wood and running around under the sun. Their bodies were as black ghosts. Zhang Fengyu suddenly had the illusion that he had entered a Japanese military camp. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. He was looking for something in the crowd. However, he suddenly saw Cheng Chumo and the others who were carrying food bowls. They were talking and laughing as they walked while removing clothes. His eyelids couldn't help but twitch. These people were also doing the same. This was a disgrace to the educated. Zhang Feng also didn't have the desire to continue looking. He thought that if he really couldn't stand such a crude scene, especially in the academy that he had single-handedly managed, then he, Zhang Feng, would really eat that thing? He found some linen and then found the old village chief. After asking him, he found a few men who knew how to sew in Tonghui Square. He then went to the sticky candy at the foot of the mountain and found some rubber that was dripping and solidifying. It was the kind of rubber that was thinner than chopsticks. The longer the rubber was boiled, the better its toughness would be. In fact, when the materials and people were all here, Zhang Feng even drew and gestured on the paper to let them understand that he was going to make a few pairs of underwear. However, even so, Zhang Feng and Zhang Fei were useless. It took a lot of talking to make these people understand. After all, it was still very difficult to make them understand one thing. After wasting 2 hours, Yu Qigong and Qin Yaojin were a little tired. They yawned and went down the mountain. Zhang Feng didn't know. After explaining for a long time, everyone finally understood. Zhang Feng dragged his tired body and went to sleep. The next morning, Zhang Feng received a pair of boxers that had been made in a hurry. Looking at the size, he was quite satisfied with the elasticity of the rubber. He rewarded all of them with 3 taels of silver each, causing them to tremble all over and repeatedly say that they did not want it. To be able to obtain Zhang Feng's satisfaction was a piece of great news for these people on the mountain. After the tailor finished kowtowing, he walked away happily. As he walked, he muttered excitedly, "The prince is arrogant, the dean is worthless," and he even thanked me with a smile. My God, this is logic. This high and mighty profession actually treated me like this. How dare they treat me like this? The principal even praised me. From now on, I will also be someone who has been specially praised by the principal. Let's see who dares to not treat me well in the future. Zhang Feng didn't know that he had unintentionally become a tiger. He took the pair of boxers that looked a little too big and rushed to the residence of Chen Chumo and the others. At this time, Chen Chumo's people seemed to have just finished their morning exercise. At this time, a group of people were next to the wooden bucket at the door. They took off all their clothes and washed up. Everyone was tired under their crotches. They shamelessly showed off their not-so-perfect figures in broad daylight. Chen Chumo's black hair made Zhang Feng wonder if this guy had completed his evolution. When they saw Zhang Feng coming, they restrained themselves a little. They didn't intend to avoid arousing suspicion. While washing, Chen Chumo waved his hand and said, "Feng Zi, why are you here so early? Do you want to wash together? The water has just been boiled and is still warm. The temperature is good for washing now." Zhang Feng looked at them with some disdain. However, he was once again sure of one thing. That was, he must build a bathhouse for these guys. Otherwise, the atmosphere on the mountain would be foul. He didn't want to see a group of people wearing boxers walking around blindly when he opened the door to save people. It was fine for him, but what about Zhang Yuyao and the others? What if they bumped into them? Tainyo, come here. I made a pair of underwear. Put it on and have a look. Underwear? What's that? Hearing this, Chen Chumo and the others looked curiously at the linen thing in Zhang Feng's hand. They didn't even intend to wipe off the water droplets on their bodies and hurriedly gathered around. At this time, after taking a bath, the smell of their feet, sweat, and someone's body odor had been reduced a little. Zhang Feng also didn't feel so dizzy. Only then did he shake the two small corners of the thong in his hand. With this, they instantly looked at the boxers under their crotch. Chen Chumo pointed at the boxers and then at his own boxers and said curiously, Feng Zi, I remember that I saw you wearing this thing when you took a bath. Is this? Hearing this, Zhang Feng's eyes instantly turned red. He bared his teeth and asked, Tell me clearly. When did you see me take a bath? Chen Chumo knew that he had said something wrong. After stammering for a while, he laughed and then bypassed this matter. Obviously, Zhang Feng didn't. He meant to forgive them. Chapter 1140. At this moment, Zhang Feng suddenly caught a glimpse of Yu Qigong walking out of Niu Xiaohu's house. He was smoking and staring at the thong in Zhang Feng's hand. Zhang Feng was a little surprised, but he understood after thinking about it. He asked, How's Xiaohu's injury? He's fine. He drank a bowl of bone-strengthening powder this morning and fell asleep again. His complexion has recovered a lot. Other than his leg being unable to move, he's basically no different from a good person. Yu Qigong's mood was a little better today, but when he saw the strange thing in Zhang Feng's hand, he asked curiously, What is this? Seeing this, Zhang Feng shook the thong in his hand and said, This is that, crotch cloth. I don't know what's going on these days. They all like to wear crotch cloth when running around. It's a disgrace to the academy. So when I saw them like this yesterday, I really couldn't bear to look at them, so I got someone to make one for them to try first. If it fits, then I'll get someone to... Leave this matter to me. You should take a good rest. Treat Xiaohu's legs first. Leave these miscellaneous matters to me. Yu Qigong didn't wait for Zhang Feng to finish and interrupted him. He took over this matter. He also didn't know what this thing was and whether it would be awkward to wear. But since it was made by Zhang Feng, it was definitely a good thing. So, Yu Qigong made a prompt decision and packed it up. After all, he had already taken over the textile factory. In his opinion, this thong should belong to this category. As long as it belonged to this category, he would be in charge. Zhang Feng was a little stunned, but before he could speak, Yu Qigong took the thong from him and threw it on Chen Chumo's head. Go and change it for me now. Ask Lao Tzu to see what magical thing it is. But Chen Chumo was overjoyed when he heard this. He hurriedly put the thing on his body in front of everyone, following Zhang Feng's instructions. After putting it on, Chen Chumo really did look better. Chen Chumo walked back and forth, even showing off his butt, twisting it in front of Zhang Feng. Looking at Zhang Feng, Chen Chumo was embarrassed, but he suppressed his embarrassment and pretended not to see it. This guy really deserved to be taught a lesson. Finally, Yu Qigong couldn't take it anymore. He scolded Chen Chumo angrily. That's enough. What are you doing? Hurry up and put on your clothes. Hearing this, Chen Chumo resentfully put away his desire to show off. Anything that happened on the mountain would always reach Li Shimin's ears. At this moment, in the imperial study, Li Shimin was looking at Niu Jinda anxiously. After listening to Niu Jinda's detailed account of Lan Tian's situation, Li Shimin asked, We heard that Jianhu's leg was broken? Is there such a thing? After hearing about it yesterday, we sent the imperial physician to the military camp. How is he now? Niu Jinda was stunned when he heard this, then bowed and said, Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. My son was blind during training and broke his leg. Li Shimin heard this and his face was full of worry. He got up and came to Niu Jinda's side, patting him on the shoulder and said, No one wants such a thing to happen, but I heard that Zhang Feng seemed to have gone to the military camp to pick him up. I heard that he has a way to fix his broken leg. Is this true? How could Niu Jinda dare to hide anything? He then told Li Shimin everything he saw after he went to the military camp, especially how Niu Jianhu woke up after Zhang Feng displayed that magical writing technique. Li Shimin was stunned when he heard this. There was actually such a thing in the world. There really were all kinds of strange things. At this time, Li Shimin even wanted to go up the mountain to see for himself how Zhang Feng fixed the bone, and even more wanted to see how he used other people's blood. However, Li Shimin was more interested in the set of equipment that Zhang Feng used to transfuse blood to Niu Jianhu. It was actually 2 fish intestines, a hollow fish bone, and a mule urine bubble. I don't want you to feel that way. He even had the impulse to test it himself, but now was not the time to talk about this. Li Shimin could only suppress the thoughts in his heart and asked, was everything okay when Jianhu was here? 3 days later, did Fengzi say whether the bone could be fixed? Niu Jinda was stunned when he heard this. Not to mention Li Shimin now, he also didn't know. However, he didn't dare to not answer the emperor's question. After a moment of silence, he said, it should be possible. Both of them couldn't help but be silent. Seeing this, Li Shimin sighed and said, heaven helps the worthy. Relax a little. If you believe that it can be done, then there should be no problem. Don't you believe in Fengzi's ability? Li Shimin was also a little uncertain, but since it had happened at this time, and it was such a thing, he knew what to say and could only comfort him. Chapter 1141. Niu Jinda hurriedly thanked Li Shimin and was about to leave. Li Shimin thought for a while and felt that it was inappropriate. If we count today, there should be more. The surgery will be done the day after tomorrow. If it's the day after tomorrow, I'll go with you to take a look. On the mountain. Zhang Feng walked out of Niu Jianhu's room 2 hours later. He then went to change the gauze on Lu Jianhu's wound. After cleaning the wound and making sure that it was not infected, he heaved a sigh of relief. In this kind of situation, the scariest thing was inflammation and wound infection. However, on one hand, it was because of Niu Jianhu's strong physique. Coupled with his anti-inflammatory medicine, the greatest effect was still seen by Zhang Feng. It was the bowl of Chinese medicine that was placed beside Niu Jianhu. One had to know that although penicillin and alcohol could play an anti-inflammatory role, it could not reduce the swelling of Lu Jianhu's injured friend so quickly. Sun Simiao must have used some magical medicine to make Lu Jianhu's leg recover so quickly. After bandaging Lu Jianhu's wound again, Niu Jianhu looked at Zaifei, who was meticulously bandaging his wound. He felt a little guilty and said with slightly cracked lips, Fengzi, if you can't do it, then forget it. Don't force yourself. At most, after 18 years, will be another. Before he could finish, Zhang Feng glared at Niu Jianhu and said, shut up. If you're my brother, then don't say that. Don't you believe that I'm waiting for you? As long as you don't die, then I, your brother, can guarantee that you will recover. You only need to recuperate in peace. You can eat and drink as much as you want. But remember that you can't eat spicy food during this period of time. You can also not touch alcohol. Your diet can only be mainly bone-strengthening powder and some cooked food. Pork leg bone. Lu Jianhu nodded heavily with tears in his eyes. When Zhang Feng saw this, he felt a little depressed and did not know what to say. He left Niu Jianhu's room. Once he left, Chen Chumo and the others closed the door and started talking at once. It was Zhang Feng's turn. Little Tiger's head and leg injuries shouldn't be a big problem. There's no inflammation or infection at the moment. This is a very good sign. Zhang Feng did not dwell on this matter. After all, it was an endless process. Telling them was like playing the lute to a cow. It was far better than playing the lute to a cow. Sun Simiao was straightforward. After all, if you played the lute to a cow, would the cow understand? Hearing this, the few of them were relieved. They didn't know what was wrong with the weather at this time, but it was slowly becoming hot and dry again. The room was so stuffy that Zhang Feng couldn't breathe. At this time, he realized that the back of his clothes had long been soaked with sweat. Chen Chumo, as if he was presenting a treasure, revealed a jar of grape wine from under the bed and invited Zhang Feng to drink. However, after filling Zhang Feng's glass with wine, he took a bowl and gulped it down. The warm wine could instantly increase one's qi and blood. Zhang Feng slapped Chen Chumo's hand and said, "How can you spoil things like this? How can you drink this grape wine without ice? Li Chengqian couldn't help but ask in surprise, Fengzi, you actually know that grapes taste better with ice? Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't speak, Li Chengqian said, after the grape wine is chilled, it is indeed very refreshing to drink. However, at this time, where can we get this thing? Even in the ice cellar of the Imperial Palace, this thing is probably very rare. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's heart couldn't help but tremble. Shao Mountain is White Deer College. Tai Niu used some unknown ability to secretly hide a jar of grapes. If it weren't for you working hard during this period, he wouldn't have been willing to take out this plate of grapes. It was said that this grape wine was inadvertently given to Uncle Chen by Lord Zhangsun when he drank with his father last time. Hearing that it was given to Yuqi Jiaoyang from the Imperial Palace, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. He hurriedly picked up the wine cup and sniffed it. It really was different from the usual grape wine. At this time, Chen Chumo, Wei Shuyu, and the people crossing the ditch had already been tempted by the chilled grape wine mentioned by Zhang Feng. Looking at the steaming grape wine, they no longer had the desire to drink wine. Chen Chumo licked his face and shook Zhang Feng's arm. He chuckled and said, Fengzi, do you have a way to get ice? If that's the case, then it's really great. Tell me, where can we get ice? I'll send someone to get it now. As long as it's not too far away, maybe we can drink it tonight. Zhang Feng only thought of this method of artificial ice by chance. It was also during this period of time when Niu Xiaohu's leg was broken that he thought of it unintentionally. However, after hearing what he said, Zhang Feng also missed the iced grape wine a little. Chapter 1142. It is indeed impossible for others to make some ice now. Where would we get ice at this time? Unless we go to the ice cellar in the palace or go to the depths of the Turks, we might be able to get some if we go back to the Qi nation. But if we go back and forth, we might as well wait for winter in the main hall. Everyone was a little disappointed when they heard this, but Zhang Feng chuckled and said, But I'm talking about others. As long as you can find saltpeter, I can make the ice for you. Cheng Chumo was too lazy to even ask about the method. He got up and rushed out of the room. Saltpeter was not easy to get, but he vaguely remembered that there was some saltpeter in the barracks at the foot of the mountain. Moreover, there was saltpeter in the smoke. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Cheng Chumo came back with a big bag of saltpeter. Zhang Feng found a water jar and poured the saltpeter into it. Then he directed a few people to pour more than half of the water into the vat. The water and the saltpeter produced a violent chemical reaction. The water splashed and there were occasional bursting sounds, as if the water was boiling. Those who saw it were greatly surprised. Under the gazes of the few people, the water surface gradually calmed down. Zhao Feng poured the prepared cold water into the copper basin and let the basin float on the water surface. Soon, under the astonished gazes of the few people, some white ripples began to appear on the water surface. Then, the white ripples gradually became clear. The bottomless water slowly turned into the color of rice soup. After what seemed like the time it took to eat a meal, the surface of the water jar was covered in white. It was like the kind of smoke that was spat out. It had accumulated all over the salt city. At this moment, the water in the copper basin began to slowly freeze. Moreover, it was rapidly freezing under everyone's gazes. Cheng Chumo secretly touched it with his hand. Instantly, he retracted his hand as if he had been electrocuted. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "F***y brother, how did you do it? Isn't this the last few days of the hot summer? This is even hotter than June. You can actually make the water freeze. My God, even the storytellers don't dare to say this." "Shut up, don't ask if you don't know. We'll be relying on it to make a fortune next year. You don't know how poor I am right now. Do you think it's easy for me to raise 2,000 to 3,000 people on the mountain? Let's talk about this first. Don't tell anyone about this. This is a way for us to get rich in the future. Do you want to drink some cold beer?" Cheng Chumo nodded his head like a rattledrum. He looked at Zhang Feng as if he was looking at a god. Cheng Chumo didn't want to continue talking about this matter. Hearing Zhang Feng's words, he kept his mouth shut. He always felt that it wouldn't be difficult for his brother to earn money. There was no need for him to make preparations now. After all, whether it was the white paper or the braised meat, etc., There was also the matter with those old bastards a few days ago. Those were all ways to make money. Moreover, those dozens of boxes of money were stored in ink. Even if it was the 2,000 to 3,000 yuan on the mountain, if they didn't do anything and just relied on the money to buy rice and food, they would still be able to live in luxury for 3 to 5 years. Why did this kid say that he was so poor? However, this wasn't the time to think about this. Being able to drink the iced grapes was the most important thing. Several people sat cross-legged around the vat. After waiting for the water in the basin to slowly freeze, Zhang Feng took out a small hammer and broke the white ice. Everyone couldn't wait to take the ice and bite it in their mouths. Then, they carefully took a few ice cubes and put them in their glass cups. Lying on the grass and drinking the refreshing iced grapes, they instantly felt very cool. The ice cubes hit the glass cups, making tinkling sounds. At this time, it sounded like a moving lullaby, making people feel refreshed from head to toe. No one was in the mood to talk. They just looked at the clouds floating in the sky, bumping into each other. From time to time, 1 or 2 little birds flew over their heads and played. Chen Chumo was a drunkard. He wasn't used to drinking small mouthfuls of wine. After drinking a bowl of wine, he got up and poured the ice cubes in the half-copper basin into the wine jar. Putting the wine jar beside him, Chen Chumo felt comfortable. He drank the wine and fell asleep for a while. Thunderous snoring sounded. Zhang Feng and others drank the wine in their bowls, looking at the sky and smiling bitterly. The weather in August was so strange and changeable. Sometimes he was as gentle as a woman's hand gently stroking her cheek. Sometimes he was as cruel as a strict father, cold and heartless. Sometimes he was as passionate as fire. He just lay there and fell asleep. When Zhang Feng opened his eyes again, the sky was already full of stars. It looked like a jade belt across the sky. The vexed Zhang Feng found the 2 stars, Cowherd and Vega, in the sky. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. They would have a chance to meet each other once a year. As for him, he still had such a chance. The distance between him and his old mother at home was more than thousands of years. This was more than 1,000 years. Not to mention this life, even in the next life, he probably wouldn't be able to meet her again. Zhang Feng smacked his lips and picked up the remaining wine in the bowl. He seemed to be toasting to the Cowherd and Vega in the sky. He said softly, "Take care." Chapter 1143. After finishing his words, he drained his wine and tossed it far away into the darkness of Mount. During this period of time, Zhang Feng did not feel a trace of danger approaching after agreeing to the clan's business. Every day, there would be a large number of people from aristocratic families coming to visit the mountain, and Zhang Feng did not reject them. Who didn't like money? Zhang Feng's generosity was also deeply liked by these aristocratic families. They had long known about Zhang Feng's character. They had investigated his character and found out that he was so generous to everyone. Therefore, they let go of the last trace of doubt in their hearts and wanted to pull Zhang Feng into their camp. Therefore, they were almost in a state of competition. The things that each family gave out were incomparable. From the beginning, it was gold and silver. To the end, it was rare treasures. Anyway, the rarer the better. No one knew where they got to know that Zhang Feng liked to collect those strange things. During this period of time, among the rare treasures that Zhang Feng received, those strange things accounted for more than half. For example, ivory carvings. Zhang Feng even found a few things like meteorites in this large pile of things. It seemed that Zhang Feng's plan had worked. However, Zhang Feng was not sure if these people were scheming against him. However, it didn't matter because the fish had taken the bait. Just as he was thinking about this, he heard Shiva's excited voice not far away, "Dean, Dean." Shiva's voice brought Zhang Feng back to reality. Seeing Shiva, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, "Dean, what's wrong? What happened?" "The old village chief of Chang and University is here." Hearing this, Zhang Feng frowned slightly. Logically speaking, the old village chief would not come up the mountain. Could it be that something had happened? After kicking Cheng Chumo and the others awake, he went to check on Niu Jianhu's injuries before hurrying back to the wooden hut with Shiva. Yes, the old scholar had been waiting for a long time. Upon seeing Zhang Feng, the old village had asked, "Back when I was at Chang and University, I heard that you were in the military camp for old Nyo's son. In the end, you even gave him the blood-seizing and soul-exchanging technique? Is there such a thing? Zhang Feng knew that the old village chief must have come for this matter. He nodded, then shook his head and said, "That's a blood transfusion to set his bones." "This is true. I'm preparing to help little Tiger with Doctor's son the day after tomorrow. As for the blood transfusion, those are just rumors. You also know that there are some things that I'm too lazy to explain. Even if I explain, it won't make sense." He quietly looked into Zhang Feng's eyes. After a dozen breaths, seeing that Zhang Feng was not lying, he sighed and said, Okay, I just don't want to say anything more. It's fine as long as you know what you're doing. But let me give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't touch it. If Sun Simiao can do it, then let him see it. After all, his reputation is out there. You should understand the principle behind it. If you kill your way out and claim this matter as your own, I can guarantee that you won't be able to stay in the academy in less than 10 days. Hearing this, Zhang Feng suddenly realized that he understood the old village chief and the old scholar's meaning. Then Zhang Feng helped him with some future arrangements and the old village chief's opinions. The two talked until late at night. Early the next morning, Zhang Feng personally sent the old scholar back to Cheng. When he went to the tavern to deal with some matters, he suddenly bumped into the steward of the Zhang mansion when he went out. When the steward saw Zhang Feng, he thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. After taking a closer look, he shouted in surprise, "Hey, when did you come down the mountain, young master?" Zhang Feng was a little speechless, but he still made a fist and palm salute and said, "Well, I had something to do, so I went down the mountain early this morning. I didn't know that you went so early. Where did you go?" Seeing that Zhang Feng was so polite, the old steward smiled even more. His eyes narrowed into slits and he said, "What can I do? A few rich young masters came to the basketball court over there and wanted to eat the snacks of our Yixing pastry shop, so I sent someone to the shop. But it was too early, so the shop didn't make the snacks. So the old master asked me to send them here quickly, so as not to lose our reputation. I just sent the snacks to them, but I didn't expect to meet you here. Miss misses you very much in the mansion." The steward insisted that Zhang Feng go to Fuli to have a seat, but Zhang Feng didn't want to go. At this time, he still had a lot of things to do, so he didn't have time to delay. However, after such a fuss, more people saw Zhang Feng. Helpless, Zhang Feng had to go to Fuli with the old steward. Zhang Feng hadn't been to Chang and City for a long time. At this time, he was strolling in Chang and City. Looking at the garbage everywhere in Chang and City and the dirty environment, Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of the magical country of India in the future. People in the future liked to describe the people of the Tang dynasty as dirty and stinky men. But in the face of such people, Zhang Feng could only laugh. It seemed that as long as the rich didn't bind their feet and didn't stick to one person until the end, it was a hurried thing. At least, at this time, although Zhang Feng saw a little dirty and messy, it was only a temporary solution. On normal days, there would still be some people coming to clean these things on the streets. But at this time, the morning market had just ended, and many vegetable farmers didn't even have time to take away the vegetables, so it looked a little dirty and messy. However, compared to the mystical country of India in the future, it was simply a heaven-like existence. At this time, Zhang Feng and the old steward were strolling in Chang'an City. From time to time, they could see a teenager jumping back and forth in a basketball court. They even saw a group of old ladies smiling from ear to ear on the basketball court, which made a group of old men scream. Chapter 1144. Zhang Feng really did not see what was so exciting about this, but perhaps these people had their own interests. Zhang Feng did not disturb them. The basketball court was built for these people to play. After a while, the two walked to the door of Niu Pai Huang's workshop with the billowing smoke. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. The old butler knew that Zhang Feng wanted to go in, so he did not say anything and stood aside to wait. Zhang Feng walked towards Niu Pai Huang's workshop. Logically speaking, the rented house should have been moved to the mountain at this time. Why were there still people cooking here? When Zhang Feng came closer, there were still many people, about 50 at this time. There was a long line here. Everyone stuck their heads out and waited for something. Niu Pai Huang's wife recognized Zhang Feng. She was also a snob. When she suddenly saw Zhang Feng in a sky-blue robe in the crowd, she thought that it was a handsome young master coming to greet him. She rubbed her eyes and found that it was Zhang Feng. She exclaimed, "Oh, I was wondering who it was." It turned out to be Prince Zhang. At this time, the people at this time did not think that it was Zhang Feng. But when they greeted the wife, they reacted and treated Zhang Hong as the master. Zhang Feng smiled bitterly, cupped his fist and apologized to the people. Then they entered the workshop. Niu Pai Huang heard the sound outside and ate a meal with the wife. Then he accompanied Zhang Feng into the workshop. After entering the bridal chamber, Zhang Feng asked, "Old Niu, what's the matter? Didn't I tell you to move to the mountain? Why is it still here?" Niu Pai Huang smiled bitterly and said, "I did want to move to the mountain, but at this time, last time, when I went to the mountain, the old village head told me to wait. He said that this thing was too scary and would disturb the name of the students on the mountain and ruin the reputation of the academy. So I heard that the workshop is being repaired in a valley downstream of the paper mill." Zhang Feng heard this and understood. It was indeed so. Originally, Shao Mountain was just a barren land. But because of this academy, this barren land gradually gained a way and an academy. Even now, it seemed to be more lively than Chang'an City. He could not help but think of a wonderful idea. Now the basic industries in Chang'an City were controlled by those big families. It was harder for ordinary people to buy real estate and land than to reach the sky. If his brain could develop Xianxia and turn it into a residential area, that would be. Zhang Feng could not help but have his eyes turn into the shape of copper coins. In his mind, he instantly imagined rows of connected villas in the future. If it was built, as long as he, Zhang Feng, was willing, it could be said that in less than a month, there would be no empty space in the whole of Shao Mountain. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng could not help but feel excited. Young Master Zhang sat there alone, giggling and making greedy noises from time to time, which surprised Oxhide Huang and his wife. They mistakenly thought that Zhang Feng was angered by them. Oxhide Huang was so angry that he beat Zhang Feng fiercely. "Yes, it's all because of you, stinky woman. I've already said that we won't do anything here. We'll go to the mountain, even if it's just a shack. It's all because of Mr. Zhang that we have today. It's all because of you, stinky mahjong. Stinky woman, your hair is long but your knowledge is short. What do you think we should do?" Niu Pai Huang's wife had never seen such symptoms before. At this time, she was also stunned by the beating and could only hug her head and cry bitterly. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only quickly mediate. "This has nothing to do with you. It's my fault. Let's put the matter on the mountain aside for now. Let's talk about the basketball business first. How's the basketball and football business recently?" When it came to serious matters, Niu Pai Huang and his wife were simply like. They spoke excitedly as if they had opened up a chatterbox. "Young Master Zhang, there's something you don't know. Last night, Lord Niu came to me personally and told me about this matter. In the past 2 months, those aristocratic families have been clamoring for it. The orders for basketball and football are terrifying. Yesterday and tomorrow, there were already 1,000 orders for basketball and about 300 for football. And those people outside seem to have heard about the Imperial College and Hongwen Hall. I don't know why, but they personally went to Fuyang to place their orders this morning. After hearing about it, these people came over like crazy and queued up to buy the basketball." Zhang Feng could not help but feel a little more confident after hearing this. After that, Zhang Feng went to the county yamen again. Niu Weili had already sent the first 2 parties back to Zhang Feng's residence. After that, because he could not refuse Niu Weili's kindness, he could only have lunch at the cliff. Then, under Niu Weili's arrangements, he went to Zhang village. When Zhang Feng arrived at the Zhang residence, he learned that Zhang Yuyao and Zhang Xing had already gone to his residence. He had no choice but to go in circles and rush back home. He was speechless. If he had known, he would have gone straight home. He would not have had to go in circles on Chang'an Street and be looked at like a monkey. Chapter 1145. The news of Zhang Feng's return spread quickly as if it had wings. When Zhang Feng returned to the gate, Jin Shu, Zhang Yuyao, and Xianxia were already waiting for him at the gate. Old Wei and Old Feng also crossed their arms and looked at him with a smile. Zhang Feng got down from the sedan and hurriedly cupped his hands. Old Wei, I didn't expect you to come too. Old Master Zhang, long time no see. You've been healthy recently. Then, Zhang Feng naturally took Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao's hands. Zhang Yuyao's cheeks turned red, but she still sweetly followed him in. He was addicted to holding hands. The first few times he held hands. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, Zhang Feng's list became bigger. As soon as he entered the gate, Zhang Feng was shocked by the scene in front of him. Inside and outside the gate, there were more than 30 burly men standing upright, holding short sticks. When they saw Zhang Feng, they shouted angrily in unison, "Old Master has returned." Those who didn't know would think that he had come to the Duke's public house. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, "This is?" Zhang Shan looked at Zhang Feng suspiciously and said, "Aren't they the people you asked old you for? Do you still remember that group of veterans?" Only then did Zhang Feng remember this matter. He greeted them and entered the courtyard. The courtyard was very big. It was so big that Zhang Feng and the others had to walk around 7 or 8 corridors before they reached the living room. There were already maids in the living room who had prepared seasonal fruits and tea. After the guests and the host sat down, they asked almost in unison about what had happened during this time, such as the basketball. They also asked about the dozens of carriages of gold and silver and those rare treasures that had been transported last night. They all asked what Zhang Feng had done and why there were so many things suddenly. They also asked about the 2 guys from the Imperial College and the Hongwenguan. They had heard that they had always been at odds with him. Why did it suddenly become like this these few days? Zhang Feng also patiently told them about the recent events. Only then did they realize what had happened. They praised Zhang Feng again and again, saying that he was good at doing business. Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling were even more amazed. They really wanted to ask Zhang Feng about the specifics of this matter, but Zhang Feng just said that he had discussed this matter with Lao Li and dismissed them. The 2 of them were not fools. Since the emperor knew about this matter, it meant that Zhang Feng was not willing to talk about it in detail. It meant that the emperor and Zhang Feng had made a plan. As for what the plan was, the 2 of them really did not know. For a moment, the 2 of them were lost in thought. Seeing this, Zhang Shan hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Men, bring the account book. Since the son-in-law is back, it's better to leave this matter to him." The old housekeeper happily entered the classroom and handed a thick account book to Zhang Feng. Zhang Shan patted the account book in his hand and said, "Feng Zi, the money recorded in this account book, as well as the paintings, porcelain, and so on, have been converted by Old Man for you. There are about 20,13,20,003 taels of gold, more than 1,000 taels of silver, and more than 50,000 strings of copper coins. As for the other things, I don't know what strange things they are. I have put them in the study for you to see later." Zhang Feng could not help but be stunned when he heard this. Where did so much come from? Without waiting for him to finish, Zhang Shan smiled and stroked his beard. "This is all thanks to you. If it weren't for you, where would we get so much money from by handing over all the branches of Chang and Hotel to them? You led each of the Guanlong 8 great families by the joining fee of 1,000 branches in one breath. These are only a part of it. There are also some, such as the Shangxi Wang clan, Longxi Li Shi, and others. Recently, they have also been negotiating with us. But we dare not agree. After all, I also know that you have conflicts with them. I was thinking of going up the mountain to talk to you, but I didn't expect that you would make this matter become like this. So, how do you think we should deal with this matter?" Zhang Feng did not have any good ideas for a while, so Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "I can't deal with this matter. You can leave it to Lao Li and Old Wei. After all, they are businessmen. They are very insightful in this regard. I am too busy these days." Wei Zheng and the others' eyelids twitched. This kid is really cunning. He wants to leave this matter to them? Obviously, he wants them to take the lead. Who in the imperial court didn't know that they did not get along with those involved? But at this time, they can't say it. After all, the emperor knows about this. Now that Zhang Feng said this, they have to go back and discuss with the emperor before making a decision. After a while, Wei Jing waited for Zhang Feng to talk about the business before asking, Xiaohu's leg, are you sure you have a way to cure it? Wei Zheng's eyes flashed with a trace of pleading. Although the poison blood life-changing method aroused his interest, he was more concerned about it. What he wanted was the bone-setting method. Chapter 1146. In the early years, it was a clan brother of Wei Zheng's. Because of the war, his legs were crippled. Until now, he had been bedridden. He had thought of many ways, and even invited a miracle doctor to take a look. But all he could do was forcefully stuff the exposed bone fractures back into his body. But even so, he still felt unbearable pain all over his body when he moved. He used to be a man like an iron tower, but after a few years of suffering, he was as thin as a stick of firewood. Today, when he heard about this, Wei Jing could not help but come forward to ask. When Zhang Feng saw this, although he was a little impatient, he still nodded and said sympathetically, as long as the bones are not broken, it should be fine. The day after tomorrow, I will prepare to set Xiaohu's bones. If you are interested, do you want to go up and take a look? Of course, he had to go and take a look. The two of them decided that 3 days later, they would witness Niu Xiaohu's miracle on the mountain. Then, Wei Jing left in a hurry, ready to pass this good news back home and let his family be happy. After Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling left, there was nothing else to do. They simply chatted about the recent gossip and interesting things. The servants in the house had just brought the dishes to the table. In the courtyard, a servant rushed in. Zhang Shan was a little unhappy. He frowned slightly and said, "Why are you panicking?" The servant said in a panic, "Old Master Zhang, it's not good." When Zhang Feng heard this, he could not help but frown. Before he could say anything, Zhang Shan's face darkened. "Bastard, tell me, what's not good?" The servant looked at Zhang Feng and then looked at Zhang Shan. Then he said, There's an employer who wants to escape." When Zhang Shan heard this, his face turned cold. "Bastard, I'm being kind to them. I've served them good food and drinks for so long, and they want to run away. Do they think this is a charity hall? Chase after him. I want to ask him what he's trying to do." The meal could no longer be eaten. The mansion was in a state of chaos, and some people even brought their dogs. Zhang Feng was looking forward to the two girls following Zhang Shan out of the living room. From afar, he could hear a burst of angry cursing coming from the back pavilion or the east hall. He went forward to take a look and saw a thin and weak body under a wintersweet tree in the east pavilion. He was being chased by people. Everyone picked up their weapons and pressed the person on the ground to beat him. The person was beaten until he screamed in pain and wailed loudly. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly stepped forward to dissuade them. Only then did they stop. Zhang Feng took a closer look. Although this person was covered in dirt and had unkempt hair and a dirty face, he looked to be about 14 or 15 years old, similar to the dog's age. He asked, "Yao, what's going on?" Zhang Yuyao briefly told Zhang Feng what had happened. After Zhang Feng moved into the villa more than 10 days ago, there seemed to be a lot of food left. Therefore, Zhang Shan decided to give the money to the refugees in Chang. However, in this way, the refugees were bound to stay at the gate of Zhang Mansion every day. Zhang Shan was quite helpless, but there were more and more refugees. Seeing that there would be more and more problems if this went on, Zhang Shan picked out some people he was quite satisfied with among these people and handed them to the steward of Zhang Feng's villa. It was a job for them so that they would not be freeloaders. However, after this matter was settled today, these people actually wanted to run away after lunch. How could Zhang Shan not be angry? Zhang Feng also had a rough idea of what he meant. He was also a little angry. This bastard, not only is he addicted to freeloading, but he has also become a dog skin plaster. Not only is he an idiot, he even steals the food of my Zhang family for half a month. If this spreads out, my reputation will be ruined. Zhang Feng patiently followed in front of that person and asked, "Why are you running away?" I want to go home." That person cried as he rubbed his swollen eyes with heart-rending pain. Zhang Feng asked again, "Why do you want to go home? You are here to work. You have to know where your duty lies." Hearing this, the young man immediately wailed and said, "My father wants to work in the field." Zhang Feng was speechless. Seeing that Zhang Feng did not speak, The young man wailed again. My father wants to work in the field. If he doesn't work, he will starve to death. He won't be able to spend the new year this year. At this time, with the young man's crying and wailing, more and more people gathered. Even the servants in the house frequently looked at him. At this time, Zhang Feng was also close to this young man, and the sympathy in his heart gradually disappeared. If he appeared too weak, there was no way to deter these people. After all, this was a family, and at this time, only Zhang Yuyao and the technical department were in the house. He was often not around. If these people thought that he was easy to talk to, wouldn't the price be chaotic in the future? Who could suppress them? Zhang Feng's face turned cold. He asked someone to bring a chair over and sat in front of the young man. He asked, "What does this have to do with your father?" "My father wants to wait for my clothes. He wants to work in the field." Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard this. The young man continued to cry and said, "If I don't go back, he won't have clothes to wear. If he can't work in the field, I will starve. When the sun is dry, I have to go back. Otherwise, he will whip me. Everyone in the family will starve. My brothers and sisters may not survive this year." Zhang Feng couldn't help but be moved when he heard this. He asked, "You and your father wear the same pants?" Chapter 1147. Lowering his head, he saw that the young man was wearing a pair of extraordinarily large breeches. The young man sniffled. In his oily hand, there was actually a lump of dirty booger. He rubbed it against the large breeches with familiarity. Zhang Feng was so disgusted that he almost threw up his dinner from last night. He let out a long sigh and looked at the other people who had caught up. They were the newly recruited workers, and their situation did not seem to be much better than the young man's. Zhang Feng turned around and looked at Zhang Shan. "Pass down the order. Make a new set of clothes for every worker." Zhang Shan hesitated for a moment, but swallowed the words he wanted to say and nodded. In his opinion, Zhang Feng was too benevolent, too benevolent. This was not a good thing for such a big family, but after all, this was Zhang Feng's own family matter. It was not good for him to interfere. It was also not good for him to say anything. At this moment, the young man heard that he had new clothes to wear. "I finally have my own clothes." In this era, he did not have any concept of new clothes. That thing seemed to only appear when his mother saw him getting married. To most people, clothes did not exist. He resisted the urge to make a sound. Zhang Feng could not bear to see such a poor person crying. He could not help but have the urge to curse. Zhang Feng turned around and walked away, hypnotizing himself as he walked. Lao Tzu was here to do business and earn money, not to do good deeds. After he finished speaking, he led the two girls away. The young man was stunned, lying on the ground like a dog. He only reacted when Zhang Feng was a distance away. Suddenly, tears burst out from his red and swollen eyes. Then, he quickly kowtowed and shouted, "Thank you for the clothes, thank you for the clothes. I will be a cow or a horse for the rest of my life." His head hit the cold rock on the ground. Red blood splattered, dyeing the sparkling marble red. Zhang Feng could vaguely hear the young man's words. His heart twitched, and he did not know what to say. After a long time, he whispered, "When will this group of people who want to cheat for food and drink disappear?" Although he was cursing, he did not know that a warm current had formed in the depths of his heart. Lao Tzu was going to fall. Zhang Feng returned to his residence and met up with Zhang Shan and the others. They chatted for a while, and there was even some unpleasantness because of this ordinary matter. According to Zhang Feng, he wanted Zhang Feng to find an old butler himself. Having an old man at home was like having a treasure. Zhang Feng recommended several candidates, but Zhang Shan rejected them all. Under Zhang San's inquiry, Zhang Feng said that he wanted to have the old village chief take over the house, but was strongly opposed by Zhang Shan. He was not related to them by blood. If such a huge family property was handed over to him, who would dare to be at ease? In the end, they were in a deadlock and the matter was left unsettled. Zhang Feng was too lazy to care about these trivial matters. After giving full authority to Zhang Shan, he left the mansion and walked up the mountain. This time, Zhang Feng bought some rare materials when he went down the mountain, especially those rare ores. At this time, he had to ask for them to prepare for the operation, such as the rubber infusion tube, the glass infusion bottle, and so on. These things were indispensable. It was impossible to use fish intestines and other things all the time, right? This thing was really too unsightly, and who knew how many germs it carried? The most important thing was still the needle. He found some strange things in the treasure room at home and then walked around the streets. After that, Zhang Feng hired a carriage and quickly went up the mountain. At this time, the smelting factory had already entered into a regular operation. Basically, it could produce about 300 gene of steel every day. However, this was under the condition that there was not enough coal. If there was enough coal, it should not be a problem to produce 500 gene a day. By the time Zhang Feng arrived, the sky had already darkened. Everyone was extinguishing their fires and preparing to rest. Arjunan strolled leisurely to the entrance of the workshop. As he looked at the sky, he saw a lantern slowly approaching. Just as he was wondering who it was, Zhang Feng coughed. Arjunan was shocked and hurried to greet him. "Mr. Dean, why are you here at this time?" Zhang Feng did not say anything and asked, "Is Mokido in?" "Well, ask him to come out. I have something to discuss with the two of you. Let's go to my cabin." While talking, Zhang Feng left with the lantern. When Zhang Feng returned to the cabin, before the lantern was lit, he heard a knock on the door. When he opened the door, he saw two dusty barbarians standing at the door. They were Arjunan and Mokido, who had just finished work. After witnessing Zhang Feng and Arjunan enter the cabin, Arjunan poured out some of the things he bought from the cowhide bag on the table and said, "I need something good now, but I don't know if the two of you can make it." When the two heard this, they were really not sure about this thing. They quickly asked, "Are you talking about the embroidery needle? Or something else?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes, it is similar to the embroidery needle, but there must be a hole in the middle where water can drip out. Can you make it?" Chapter 1148. This time, the two of them were completely stumped. If it was a needle, anyone could make it. However, it required a hole in the middle, which was difficult. The needle was so thin, but if it was like this, Zhang Feng explained the infusion needle in detail. Only then did Mokido realize, if that's the case, this old servant is willing to give it a try. However, I might not be able to make it. Give me 2 days. Zhang Feng shook his head and extended a finger. 1 day, only 1 day. Hearing this, the two of them could not help but change their expressions slightly. However, they still nodded heavily and left in a hurry. When they left, they took away the infusion needle that Zhang Feng had given her, as well as the syringe and the needle manufacturing blueprints. Then he said to Mokido, "I heard that you were a top glaze master in the Western region? An expert glaze master in the world?" Mokido repeatedly declined, not daring to call himself an expert. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "You are worthy of this title. Don't decline. I don't have so many rules here. If you can do it, you can. If you can't, you can't. This is what you have to do." Hearing this, Merkel was a little touched. However, she did not know what he wanted to do. She stood silently at the side, seemingly knowing what he was worried about. Seeing this, Zhang Feng said, "Actually, you don't have to worry so much. Here you're just like home. What are you worried about? Actually, I have something here. If you are willing, I can pass it to you now and let you go back to your old profession." Zhang Feng explained the concept of the infusion tube and the infusion bottle. When he went to Chewing Gum's place, Zhang Feng wanted to talk about this. However, although the two of them had been in contact with rubber for a while, if they wanted to make such a high-end product, Zhang Feng was probably thinking about it himself. That was why he asked Mokido. With Zhang Feng's detailed explanation, the glass bottle and the infusion set were easy to make. However, the main problem was the infusion tube made of rubber. He could not help but feel a little troubled. He knew about rubber because it was sometimes used when making glazes. However, at this time, he had to make a plastic tube completely out of rubber. What was plastic? How could it be used to make a rubber tube? Zhang Feng saw that he couldn't explain, so he simply found a piece of rubber from the rare treasures that the 5 surnames and 7 hopes had given him this time. He then found a small copper bowl and placed it on top of the oil lamp to slowly boil it. A piece of rubber about the size of a fingernail was placed in the bowl of soup and let it boil. Mokito's eyes were fixed on the boiling process in the copper bowl. The process was very long. The two of them chatted about other things and Mokito's progress with the firearms. After about 2 hours, the piece of rubber that was originally the size of a fingernail had become as clear as water. Zhang Feng then stood up and took a medium-sized bamboo stick from the broom. He brought it to me and chewing gum and said, "Look carefully. This is the method to make this flexible tube." As he spoke, Zhang Feng used the mud to make a mold that looked like a brick. Then he slowly pressed the bamboo stick in his hand down and made a mold. Then he carefully poured the boiled rubber into the bowl. Halfway through, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped and filled up the bamboo skewers in his hand. He pressed and rolled them in the gaps between the skewers. Then he poured the real rubber on the bamboo skewers back into the bowl. He increased the flame of the oil lamp and continued to boil. After a while, Zhang Feng took out a sharp knife and cut the solidified rubber along the surface of the mold until it was flat. Then, he carefully took out the translucent thing that was stained with a lot of mud and put it aside. Then he made another mold and used the same method to pour the other half in and cut it again. At this time, Zhang Feng said, "Look carefully. This is the most important part." While speaking, Zhang Feng used an even smaller bamboo stick to evenly spread the rubber in the bowl on the half of the mold. After he finished, Zhang Feng carefully connected the other half. Only then did Zhang Feng let out a deep sigh of relief. In fact, he didn't know how to make this thing. The key was that he didn't know how to teach, so he could only wait for the plastic pipe to solidify. After that, Zhang Feng cleaned the mud on it. After cleaning it, he left a transparent pipe that was the size of a chopstick. Zhang Feng sent the pipe to Mokito. Mokito was instantly shocked. He took the pipe with both hands. The pipe was very soft, like a dried yangjing. It was quite elastic. When he looked at the end of the pipe, he saw that there was a pipe in the middle. It was the size of a small bamboo stick. Mokito couldn't help but ask, "Is this the pipe you were talking about?" Gao Feng nodded, "I want this kind of thing." "Now, you know what to do, right?" When Mokito saw this, he held the tube like it was a treasure and nodded heavily, "I understand." Then he hesitated for a moment. Then he took out a summary of the medical equipment and sent it to Mokito. "Keep this thing carefully. Don't spread it. This is my secret." Chapter 1149. Mokito was so emotional that he almost knelt down in front of Zhang Feng. He grabbed Zhang Feng with his trembling hand and choked with sobs for a long time. In the end, Zhang Feng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "If you want to thank me, get it out before tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, or better yet, at this time tomorrow night, I want it in my hands." Mokito wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and nodded heavily. Then he walked out of Zhang Feng's room. It was another sleepless night. For many people, it was an ordinary night. However, for many people, it was the beginning of a difficult month, especially on Shao Mountain. The people of White Deer College. Niu Jianhu's leg injury was imminent. Although the wound's infection had been temporarily suppressed, the result was still imminent. Many people, whether it was White Deer College or Chang'an City, had their eyes fixed on the mountain. They were all waiting for Zhang Feng to succeed. The lights in Zhang Feng's room were not turned off for the entire night. Only when the sound of running exercises could be heard did Zhang Feng slowly drag his tired body to a chair in front of the door and sit down. After washing his face with cold water, he hurriedly walked to Sun Simiao's bamboo house. Sun Simiao was brewing tea. When he saw Zhang Feng, he was not surprised. He poured a cup of tea for Zhang Feng and said, "I heard that you didn't sleep last night?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes. But because there is no time. Xiaohu's leg cannot be delayed any longer. Tomorrow is the last day, so," Sun Simiao smiled. "So you want to let the old man do it now, right?" He nodded and said, "To be safe, I still want to test it to prevent any mistakes." "Old man, I've thought about it a long time ago. Even if you didn't mention it, I would have thought about it too. I'll look for you later. I heard that Lao Li and the others will come to the mountain to watch tomorrow." Zhang Feng didn't know who spread the news, but he still nodded in tacit agreement. Sun Simiao didn't say anything. He just looked at Zhang Feng and received it. Last night, I heard from Old Fart that a lamb in the sheep pen on the mountain broke its leg when it climbed over the fence. Zhang Feng couldn't believe it. How could it be so coincidental? However, he still heard Sun Simiao say, "The sheep are already prepared next door. Let's go to Old Gao's place now. There are fewer people there and no one will disturb us. It should be a good place to go." Zhang Feng nodded. "Let's give it a try. But there's one thing, Elder Sunday." This time, without waiting for him to finish, Sun Simiao laughed and said, "I know what you want to say. I've discussed your matter with Mr. Bo Shi and the others. Isn't it because the situation is unclear at this time? Don't worry. When the time comes, I'll announce that these things were made by me. It won't cause you any trouble. What do you think?" Zhang Feng couldn't help but hesitate. He stared at Sun Simiao, who looked indifferent. "I didn't expect Elder Sun to do this. I'm afraid that it will affect Elder Sun's reputation. Why don't we think of other ways? A person values himself very much." Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of one thing. That was the profession of a doctor. Especially doctors in ancient times. They all lived by reputation. If such a thing happened at this time, it was very likely that something unexpected would happen. Some people might not be able to practice medicine because of this. However, Sun Simiao laughed and said, "Kid, you're thinking too much. What do you think the old man relied on to become a student? He relied on the old man's magnanimity. If the old man felt that it was right, he would do it. The old man never cared about reputation. As long as it was useful, it was the right thing to do. So I'll give you a piece of advice. Sometimes reputation is a good thing, but sometimes it's a poison that harms people." Zhang Feng's expression changed. He hurriedly bowed and said, "I'll remember the Church of Grace." Sun Simiao nodded with satisfaction. After drinking a cup of tea with Zhang Feng, he said, "Let's go. Let's go see that lamb." At this time, the farm was very quiet. The infusion was basically done here on Monday. Jing Tufu had already moved to the foot of the mountain. Only Gouda and Ma Zhou were left here. Although it was a little dirty, it was considered a quiet place in White Deer College. More than half of the pigs in the farm, as well as pigs, sheep, chickens, ducks, geese, and other animals, had disappeared. Some were eaten by the people on the mountain, but more were sent to the tables of the people in Chang. As for the farm, at this time, there were only a few boars and sows that were deliberately left behind. There was also a group of piglets that were playing around, as well as a dozen groups of chickens, ducks, and geese that were leisurely strolling around. At this time, thinking about it again, it was simply a world of difference from a month ago. A month ago, this place was known as the first in the entire Chang and city and even the surrounding areas of Chang. But now, this place seemed so empty. The wild grass frantically exuded its fragrance in the farm. Before it could sway in the wind, a little piglet's mouth sniffed it and then bit it off. Chapter 1150. He grew healthily and became the pig's delicacy. Then he grew with all his might, and the pig nibbled on him again. The cycle repeated itself. Elder Gao seemed to have known that Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao were coming. He was already waiting at the door. When he saw the two of them, Elder Gao cupped his fists and gestured for them to enter. "The second floor is ready. The hot water and all other aspects are also prepared. We can begin now." Zhang Feng didn't say anything. He just followed Sun Simiao into the spacious room that used to belong to Butcher Zheng. It was now empty. A lamb was placed on the table in the middle of the room. It was tied up on the table, and its left front hoof drooped weakly on the edge of the table. When the lamb saw them enter, it looked at them in horror. Its mouth moved as if it was asking them what they were going to do. Zhang Feng patted the lamb's head and said, "Then when do we start?" "Now, let's start now," Sun Simiao said as he organized his medicine box. There was no time now. The failure of the mule experiment last time left a huge psychological shadow on Sun Simiao. At this moment, Sun Simiao seemed to be afraid to face it. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't say anything. The two of them carefully cut open the lamb's skin. There weren't any clamps or the like at this time, so they could only let Ma Zhou hold the cut open skin. After all, it wasn't Ma Zhou's first time doing something like this. Although he was good at it, he still felt a little pale when he made such a big cut on a lamb's leg. Even so, he still wanted to see what Zhang Feng was going to do. He also wanted to see the miraculous result. After doing all this, Zhang Feng basically plucked all the hair off the lamb's leg. The skin below the thigh and the part above the hoof were all peeled off. Because it had been fed the anesthetic soup beforehand, the lamb looked at them in horror. Its head rubbed against Zhang Feng's hand from time to time as if it was asking, "What is this? What are you doing?" Zhang Feng didn't explain all this to the lamb. He didn't want to. In no time at all, he had separated all the muscles on the lamb's body according to the location of the fascia. The lamb's bones had been broken into two. One of the bones had already popped out, while the other was inserted into the bone marrow of the other broken bone. Zhang Feng looked at the wound. Although he felt a little disgusted, he endured it and cleaned the wound. Then, he put down the dagger and looked at Elder Sunday. "It's up to you now." Sun Simiao nodded. Although this was his first time personally handling a knife, he was only an assistant the last time he was in the military camp. Therefore, it was inevitable that he would be nervous for the first time. Fortunately, the lamb's leg was completely cut open. After the muscles that wrapped around the bone were all cut open, the broken bone was taken out and soaked in alcohol to disinfect it. Then, according to Zhang Feng's instructions, he slowly looked for the cracks of the broken bone and pieced it back together. After all this was done, they naturally stitched up the muscle and fixed it. Zhang Feng didn't have to worry about this. After all, Sun Simiao had done it before, so he was quite familiar with it. Although it seemed very simple, it still took a full 4 hours to complete. When the two of them stopped, they were sweating profusely. However, he realized that old Gao and Ma Zhou were staring blankly at the lamb leg that had recovered to its original state with pale faces. The leg of the lamb was restored, and even the outer fur was sewn back. However, the broken part of the leg was firmly fixed with pieces of bamboo. After doing all this, Sun Simiao pulled out the acupuncture needles from the lamb's body one by one. The lamb still didn't seem to feel anything. It shook its hooves and realized that they were touching its hooves. It panicked and used its nose to rub the bamboo on the ladder. It even stuck out its tongue and sneezed a few times. Sun Simiao said, "Make it drink all the things we prepared. Let me know when the effect of the anesthetic is over." After finishing all this, the two of them dragged their tired bodies back to old Gao's bedroom. They drank a big jar of water before they recovered. The two of them couldn't help but smile at each other. They couldn't hide the excitement in their eyes. The lamb's experiment seemed to have succeeded. Once the effects of the anesthetics wore off, if the lamb was fine, then it would be truly alive. Chapter 1151. I didn't expect you to be so talented in this field. Before he could finish speaking, Zhang Feng gave him a thumbs up. Sun Simiao smiled and said, "In ancient times, Hua Tuo cut open the skull, and Qin Shi Huang repaired the brain. After that, Bian Ke scraped off the bones of Guangong to treat his wounds." Although these stories were passed down by word of mouth, and the old man had also cut open people's chests with a knife, this was the first time he had set a bone. Although he was a little unfamiliar with it, this was still the old man's first time. He had a different understanding of medicine, so he was still confident. Indeed, after coming into contact with Zhang Feng's magical medical skills, Sun Simiao had really yearned for it. However, after personally experiencing it, he felt as if he had opened a brand new door in the field of medicine. After that, Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao once again studied the entire operation in detail. They even repracticed the operation with Niu Jianhu many times. After that, the two of them dragged their tired bodies back to their respective rooms. The moment Zhang Feng entered the room, he went to sleep. Everything was ready. He was just waiting for the night to go over and see how the lamb was recovering. If the lamb was alive. If it was alive, that meant that the success rate of Niu Jianhu's operation was already 90%. If there was even the slightest problem with the lamb, this matter would be a little troublesome. After all, Zhang Feng did not specialize in medicine. He only knew some general knowledge about physiology. Besides, this matter really had something to do with him. He did not want old Yu and old Niu to be so sad. Speaking of which, this was also his mistake. Although his two old buddies wouldn't blame him, Zhang Feng still felt guilty in his heart. After scolding himself in his heart, Zhang Feng slowly fell asleep. He had not slept well for a few days. At this moment, under the exhaustion, he finally fell into a deep sleep. The Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet was imminent. With the mess at home and the mess at the academy, Zhang Feng did not have time to prepare these things. He could only beg Li Chengqian and the others to put in a little effort. After all, if they only trained one kind of street dance in 12 days, as long as they put in a little effort, there should not be any mistakes. After all, the poetry meet was mainly about poetry. Even if they made mistakes, he would be there to support them. Although it would not be perfect, it would not attract too much attention. What Zhang Feng wanted was not just a chance to become a great scholar, but more importantly, he wanted to make his name known to the world. When he woke up the next morning, the sky was still dark. Zhang Feng opened the window and allowed the cold breeze to caress his cheeks. He looked out the window at a few women from Tonghui Square carrying buckets of water, going back and forth between the cafeteria and the mountain gate. In the small wooden house's storeroom, there were faint sounds of people handing over the day's food. Everyone seemed to have been attracted by the sound of Zhang Feng opening the window. They instantly turned their heads and saw Zhang Feng get up. They all went up to greet him. There were even 2 bold women who joked and wanted to help him dress up. After all, Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu were gone. Zhang Feng had returned to his sloppy appearance. What time was it today? But this was the time when the 3 major departments of the Ministry of Works and Rights, as well as elders from all parties gathered at White Deer College to witness Zhang Feng's opportunity. If he went like this, wouldn't he be embarrassing White Deer College? However, Zhang Feng waved his hands and declined. When the 2 women saw this, they had no choice but to find Old He and his wife. Old He's wife didn't say anything and directly pressed Zhang Feng onto a stool. With Old He's wife personally handling the scythe, he finally calmed down. However, when he saw the scythe in Old He's hand, he couldn't help but feel scared. He asked, "Old He, what are you doing with the scythe?" Old Ho pointed at Zhang Feng's chin and the black hair between his lips and said, "I'm shaving your beard. A man's beard needs to be trimmed to be better and thicker. Don't you know this?" Zhang Feng was so scared that his whole body trembled. He was about to go on strike. "Okay, I won't shave. I'll do it myself when the time comes, okay? I won't shave today. I think it looks good like this. This is called personality." After Zhang Feng repeatedly begged for mercy, Old He reluctantly put down the scythe. When he left the room, Steamed Bun had returned to the mountain. She squatted at the door with Guzi and Juzi, staring at Zhang Feng. Seeing Zhang Feng come out, Steamed Bun grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and refused to let go. Zhang Feng had no choice but to hug and touch her. Who wouldn't like such a cute little girl? The most leisurely person on the mountain now should be this little girl, right? Zhang Feng took Steamed Bun around the mountain and came to the cafeteria. He chose a few snacks and side dishes that Mo liked to eat. It was not easy to make the little girl happy. However, Old He waited for Steamed Bun to finish her meal before he hurriedly took Steamed Bun away. This time, Cheng Chumo's people didn't come for breakfast. It was said that they went to the mountain to run before dawn. It seemed that they also knew that Zhang Feng had been troubled recently, so they didn't dare to bother him. They were practicing the so-called street dance desperately. They didn't let anyone see it and beat up anyone who saw it. Zhang Feng was speechless. He touched his chin and looked at Guzi and Juzi who were eating the food on the 2nd floor. He laughed and scolded, "Did I cheat you on the mountain? Can't you eat more gently?" The 2 laughed, but they still wolfed down the food. "It's so delicious. Brother Feng, why is the food on the 2nd floor different from the food on the 1st floor?" Zhang Feng smiled and didn't say anything. After a while, he asked, "Do you want to eat the food on the 2nd floor?" How could the 2 kids not want to? Their heads nodded like rattles. Seeing this, Zhang Hong laughed and said, "Then I'll give you a task. As long as you can familiarize yourself with the disciple rules at the end of this year, I'll make an exception and accept you as my last disciple. From now on, you'll eat whatever I eat." Chapter 1152. The 2 naturally didn't know what the disciple rules were. Not to mention these, they didn't even know how to read. Zhang Feng's promise to them was just a joke, but it also gave them a reason to keep up with the others. A goal to stand out. After accompanying the two of them to eat, when they walked out of the cafeteria, they saw Ma Zhou anxiously walking back and forth at the entrance of the cafeteria. He was holding a steamed bun made of brown rice in his hand and eating it with relish. Zhang Feng looked at the cafeteria in surprise and said, "Did you not release the tickets or something? Why are there so many delicacies? Why are you eating this thing?" Ma Zhou smiled awkwardly. "I'm used to it. I still have to save money. Buying books is more important." Zhang Feng was a little speechless. He was too lazy to argue with him. He asked, "Why are you waiting here so early? Tell me." Hearing this, Ma Zhou's face flashed with excitement and said, "I want you to see something good. Now that Dr. Sun has gone, you are the only one left." After hearing this, Zhang Hong realized that he should be treating the lamb. Then she hurried back to the farm with Chairman Ma. In the yard of the farm, the expert and Dr. Sun were squatting in the yard and staring at a little lamb. One of the little lamb's legs was tied with a bamboo splint. However, it was limping and bleeding happily on the grass. While eating grass, from time to time, it would use its mouth to nudge the hooves tied with the bamboo splint and bleat twice. It seemed to bleat twice as if it was complaining to everyone, wanting them to take down the ugly thing. Seeing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but be overjoyed. He asked, "Elder Gao, is this the lamb from yesterday?" Sun Simiao laughed and stroked his beard. "What do you think?" Several people couldn't help but laugh heartily. After laughing, Sun Simiao patted the medical kit next to him and said, "This operation is no small matter. Wait, I heard that it should be at 12:45. They will all come to watch. Where are you going to do the operation?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but have a dignified expression. If so many people came to see it, logically speaking, it should be placed in an open area outside. However, there were too many bacteria outside, and it wasn't easy to do this. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng suddenly slapped his head and said, "I'm going to put it in the teaching building." "Can't the teaching building do that?" "No. That's a place where we read the books of the sages. If we see something like that, we'll see blood. Moreover, the mountain gate hasn't even opened yet. It's very inauspicious." Zhang Feng waved his hand. "What's wrong with that? Didn't the academy set up military science and medical science for the first time? Let's treat this as a medical lesson for the entire academy. What do you think?" Sun Simiao still strongly objected, but at this time, the expert praised, "Prince Zhang's method is very good. I think it's feasible. Old Sun, don't be entangled in these clichés. Which rule in the academy do you think is strictly adhered to?" While speaking, the expert pointed at the lamb's leg. Sun Simiao was stunned, and then he heaved a heavy sigh of relief. "That's right, if I pay too much attention to these things, then I'd rather not do it." In that case, he might as well not do it. Everything that Zhang Feng was doing now was so shocking. If he had to take this into consideration, then what was the point of doing it? Fine. Since it's like this, then I'll do as Fengzi said. Today, the sky was still beautiful. In the boundless blue sky, there wasn't even a trace of cloud to be found. Before dawn, carriages appeared at the mountain gate one after another. At first, the old village head at the gate personally welcomed them, but as more and more people came, the old village head became numb. He just nodded and clasped his hands to the people who came. Then he found a student and introduced the academy to them while leading them into the already prepared classroom. Naturally, the old village head didn't need to introduce people he was familiar with. He didn't have so much free time. The classroom was painted snow white, and at this moment, one could still vaguely smell the smell of lime. However, such a bright classroom made everyone abnormally excited, and it added a sense of solemnity to the atmosphere. The tables and chairs in the classroom designated by Zhang Feng were all moved away, leaving only the operating table in the middle prepared by Zhang Feng. A thick white blanket was spread on the operating table, and a sterilized white wool skin was placed on top of it to prevent the blood from flowing. In the classroom, there was a smell of mugwort smoked and baked. Even the ground was sprinkled with a thick layer of quicklime to disinfect. At this time, the smell of lime had already covered the smell of mugwort. Originally, the windows of the academy's teachers were made according to the glass windows in the back room. However, there was no time to make transparent glass, so at this time, although there were iron rods and other things, they were all white pieces of paper. This was also the detestable part of the academy. It was good to have white paper, but at this time, the window paper had already been poked with holes of various sizes. Chapter 1153. A group of people blocked the classroom door, as well as the window, staring. They looked at Niu Jianhu, who was lying on a bed, blinking, discussing something. When had Niu Jianhu ever seen such a scene? These people here were all big shots. Moreover, they had come especially for him. As he lay on the bed and greeted everyone with a smile, he urged Zhang Feng to hurry up. Zhang Feng was so angry that he threatened him that if he dared to move again, his legs might not be guaranteed. Only then did Niu Jianhu hurriedly shut his mouth. Li Shimin did not come. But Li Yuan came late, with his hands behind his back, ignoring everyone's dissuasion. He walked straight into the classroom and sat next to Niu Jianhu. Soon after, a servant set up a small table next to him and put some incense on it. There was even a small tea stove. Zhang Feng glared at Li Yuan and had an impulse to kill someone. But the more Li Yuan ignored him, the more he sat down to boil tea and drink. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only sigh and no longer care about him. He did not see him at that time. After everyone had arrived, Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao looked at each other, nodded and said, "Then let's start." "Wait for Feng Zi." At this time, Niu Jianhu was anxious and said, "My father doesn't seem to have come." Just as Zhang Feng was about to make a move, Lu Jianhu did not find him in the crowd. Although Niu Jianhu was not afraid of death, he also hoped that his father was by his side. Zhang Feng looked out the window after hearing this, but he really did not see him. He looked at Yu Qigong outside the door and said, "Pervert old you, why didn't old Niu come?" Yu Qigong looked to the side. Speechless, he said, "What, you still want me to invite you?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng knew that Niu Jinda had come long ago, but he did not want to see Niu Jianhu's current state. He heard that his father came. Only then did Niu Jianhu lie down in satisfaction. He put on a generous appearance and said, "Come." Seeing this, Sun Simiao passed a bowl of numbing soup and sleeping pills to Niu Jianhu after getting Zhang Feng's permission. Seeing this, Niu Jianhu gulped it down without hesitation and even waved his hand at the door. Seeing this, Sun Simiao said, "Fengzi, should we make some preparations?" Sun Simiao was the one who had stage fright. Zhang Feng waved his hand and looked at Yu Qigong. "Old Yu, I remember that there were still 2 Turks left after the blood transfusion. Where are they?" Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Was this kid really going to use the blood exchange life-prolonging technique? Everyone could not help but stare unblinkingly at Zhang Feng. Yu Qigong said, "Wait a moment. That's good. Look at me. I can't believe I forgot something so important." He didn't forget about it. In fact, he had already prepared it. He just wanted to see if this kid really needed it. Yu Qigong hurriedly waved his hand. A person who had been washed clean and tied up like a dumpling was carried into the classroom by 2 strong men. As soon as he entered the classroom, the Turk had already been washed clean. Zhang Feng could even faintly smell the scent of alcohol on him. It seemed like they had learned from Zhang Feng and forced him to drink. However, that kind of alcohol was useless. It could only make the blood more active, which was not beneficial to Niu Jianhu at all. However, Zhang Feng could not say it out loud. He cupped his fists at everyone and said, "For White Deer College, the first medical class of the year officially begins." At this moment, 2 voices sounded from outside the door. "Brother Zhang Feng, please wait a moment. Can we come in and take a look?" The person who spoke was Ouyang Kai. He was standing at the back of the crowd. Seeing Ouyang Kai and the others wave their hands, Zhang Feng was a little hesitant. However, looking at Li Yuan's arrogant appearance, he finally clenched his teeth and said, Come in. As long as you guys can take it, what's the harm in coming in? The premise is that you guys can take it. Don't make a sound." The 2 of them were very excited. They hurriedly swore before hurriedly entering the classroom. Seeing this, He Zhongjing and Old Qian wanted to enter as well. However, the moment the 3 of them reached the door, they hurriedly shrank back when they saw Li Yuan. Ouyang Kai Yu and Lu Hongwen also knew Li Yuan. However, They were here on behalf of the Academy for the academic exchange. They had already reached a consensus with Zhang Feng regarding this matter. The three academies had formed an alliance, so it was still acceptable. They just pretended not to know and pretended to be calm. However, Li Yuan did not even look at the two of them. This made them feel a little embarrassed. After all, why would a person of his level care about a few small shrimps? After everything was prepared, Zhang Feng saw the effects of the malfeasance slowly appear. Niu Jianhu also felt a little sleepy. At this moment, Zhang Feng used his finger to poke Niu Jianhu's leg and asked, "Little Hu, do you feel it?" Hearing this, the sleepy Niu Jianhu shook his head dully. In the end, he fell into a deep sleep. Only at this moment did Zhang Feng let out a sigh of relief and said, "Let's begin." Following Zhang Feng's call to begin, everyone did not dare to breathe loudly. They stared at Zhang Feng with their eyes wide open. That Li Yuan even put down the tea that he had picked up. With his hands behind his back, he stood up and looked at the dagger in Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao's hands. As for Ouyang Kai, Yu, and Lu Hongwen, the two of them stared at Zhang Feng with a face full of curiosity. They wanted to see how exactly he would start this so-called bone setting. Zhang Feng fixed the Turk, who had been drunk in advance, on a shelf at the side. Then he washed the transparent glass flat and the pages of the book that he had rushed to make overnight with alcohol. Only then did he nod at Sun Simiao. Seeing this, Sun Simiao used alcohol to gently wipe the Turk's carotid artery. Then he wiped Niu Jianhu's arm. After that, Zhang Feng used a rubber bandage to tie Niu Jianhu's arm, making his blood vessels protrude. Then, he used a needle to gently prick the Turk's neck. With this prick, the blackened blood instantly flowed along the rubber tube and into the glass bottle. Seeing what was inside, everyone could not help but be shocked. Was this that kind of blood exchange technique? Chapter 1154. After everything was done, the blood slowly filled up about half of the infusion bottle. Zhang Feng then slowly inserted the needle on the other side into Niu Jianhu's arm. After a cycle was formed, and Niu Jianhu did not have any abnormalities. Only then did Sun Simiao examine Niu Jianhu in detail. He slowly inserted the 99 silver needles into his various acupoints. After that, Zhang Feng covered Niu Jianhu's body with a piece of white cloth. Only his face and injured leg were exposed. At this moment, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Yu Qigong's expression changed slightly. He looked at Niu Jinda, then at Niu Jianhu, and then at Zhang Feng. He saw a flash of disappointment in Zhang Feng's eyes, and he couldn't help but frown. Logically speaking, this white thing filled with bad luck was meant for people who had passed away, right? Why did this kid give it to Niu Jianhu? Could it be that he had no other choice? Was he just doing his best? At this moment, almost everyone present had such thoughts. Even Li Yuan frowned slightly. He coughed softly and hurriedly reminded Zhang Feng, "Fengzi, isn't the white cloth a little inappropriate?" "What's wrong with it?" However, as soon as the words left his mouth, Zhang Feng instantly remembered that this was the Tang dynasty. Moreover, the people were quite wary of these things. 100 steps could not be used by living people. Except for mourning. The expressions of Zhang Feng and the others were very strange. Yu Qigong's expression was also a little pale. Zhang Feng hurriedly explained, "Everyone, don't misunderstand. The reason why this cloth is used is because this is a pure colored cloth that has just been woven. This is medical knowledge. There are irritating ingredients on the cloth that has been dyed. If it covers the body, it will be thick and troublesome. However, this batch of cloth has been boiled in boiling water and then repeatedly detoxified, so there's no other meaning. Everyone, don't worry. It's just for the sake of a more perfect success in this operation." Hearing this, everyone's expressions became slightly better. Zhang Feng heaved a deep sigh of relief. He was very worried that if word of this got out, if he was careless and did not explain, if the surgery failed, how would he face old Niu? In this era, only wearing white things on one's body was tantamount to something inauspicious. Zhang Feng really didn't think of this point. Although this matter had been explained, he was still somewhat skeptical. However, Zhang Feng did not have the time to explain. After all, time was of the essence. If he delayed any longer, the weather at night would be fine, but during the day, the temperature at noon would be too high. The possibility of bacterial infection was very high. After washing his hands, he and Sun Simiao did not hesitate to gently cut open the skin and flesh above Niu Jianhu's calf bones. As soon as the two sabers slashed down, it instantly caused a wave of exclamations. Although Li Yuan was used to this kind of bloody scene, it was really the first time he saw a knife on a living person at this time. His face couldn't help but become somewhat pale at this time. Everyone's hearts were in turmoil. Ouyang Kai's entire body was trembling. This was really the first time he saw a living person cutting open the skin and flesh on the leg. That visual impact, it was simply too good. At this time, Sun Simiao was also not feeling well. He had practiced 2 or 3 times. If he were to do it now, due to the success of the lamb last time, Sun Simiao's mood was greatly relieved. He no longer had the previous worries. Although the saber in his hand was still trembling, the action of cutting open the skin and flesh still leaked out a little. After all, this was doing something on a living person. He did not dare to guarantee that nothing would happen. Now, Niu Jianhu's leg bones had been exposed for 3 days. At this time, the cells at the front of the bone were slightly dry, and the bone stubble was a little black. Zhang Feng took out the 3-edged bayonet that he had prepared in advance and used it as a brush. He rubbed away the broken parts at the front of the bone, trimmed it slightly, and cleaned the stains and coagulated blood on it. This work was very meticulous. Zhang Feng could only do it himself. When the people present heard the sound of the file, they could not help but feel their hearts churn. Even their legs were trembling. After another hour, Zhang Feng finally finished everything. He looked at Sun Simiao and said, "Elder son, wait for me to count to 3. When I count to 1, let's use our strength together and reset his leg bones. What do you think?" Sun Simiao did not have time to answer at this time. He only nodded heavily. At this time, outside the door and inside the door, the 3 people stood on their tiptoes and stuck their heads out to see how they were going to reset the leg bones. At this time, Zhang Feng was holding Niu Jianhu's leg. His heart was beating faster. After he was ready, he looked at Sun Simiao, who was holding Niu Jianhu's leg, and said slowly, 3, 2, 1. Pull. As Zhang Feng's voice fell, the 2 of them used their strength at the same time. Then, they slowly stretched Niu Jianhu's right leg in the opposite direction. Even though Niu Jianhu had taken anesthetics and sleeping pills, he still screamed in pain due to the intense pain. But before he finished screaming, Niu Jianhu fainted from the pain again. Chapter 1155. Zhang Feng could not care about anything else. Although the leg bone had returned to its original position, it did not mean that the matter was over. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and stared at Niu Jianhu's leg bone. After hesitating for a while, the leg that did not have much blood to begin with gushed out blood again. It was like a blowout. Zhang Feng did not care about anything else. His eyes were fixed on the bone stubble, looking for every broken crack. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. No one knew what Zhang Feng was doing. After about the time it took to eat a meal, Zhang Feng finally set the bone. However, at this moment, he looked as if he had been fished out of the water. After that, Zhang Feng took out the remaining penicillin that he had prepared beforehand and disinfected the bone. After disinfecting the bone, he quickly stitched up the fascia and muscles. Then he cleaned up the last layer of skin and flesh. However, the blood was still gushing out crazily as if a gate had been opened. Sun Simiao hurriedly pierced another silver needle at the base of Niu Jianhu's thigh. Only then did the bleeding slow down. However, Niu Jianhu's face gradually turned pale. Although he had been receiving a continuous blood transfusion, the blood flow was too fast and the body could not bear it. Zhang Feng hurriedly urged, "Elder son, quickly suture. You go up and I'll go down." Sun Simiao checked Niu Jianhu's pulse and so on. Zhang Feng checked the eyelids and pupils. After that, the 2 of them hurriedly began to suture. However, the trickling blood instantly fermented in the lime powder in the classroom under the high temperature. The smell became strange. It was pungent and had a hint of spiciness. Everyone could not help but become more worried. This kid, could it be that he could not pull through? Quick, cotton ball. Elder son, quickly suture. Prepare the sore medicine to prevent massive bleeding. Zhang Feng looked at the blood that kept gushing out as he sutured. He was also a little panicked. In the future, there were too many of such things. Postoperative hemorrhage was a common occurrence. However, this time, it happened right in front of Zhang Feng's eyes, and he was the chief surgeon. Only then did Zhang Feng personally understand how difficult it was for a doctor to face such a situation. After that, Zhang Feng picked up some bandages that he had prepared in advance to stop the bleeding. He sewed up Niu Jianhu's wound while disinfecting it. In the end, Zhang Feng clenched his teeth and poured all the penicillin he had made himself onto the wound. Just like that, after the time it took to brew a cup of tea and a meal, Sun Simiao inserted the final needle. The surgery was finally a success. The two of them didn't dare to be careless. After all, Niu Jianhu's right leg was still bleeding. If it weren't for the free blood transfusion, Niu Jianhu would probably be. Sun Simiao checked Niu Jianhu's pulse and nodded. Then, together with Zhang Feng, they wrapped the bandage in their hands tightly around the wound. Basically, after wrapping a layer of gauze, they had to put a thick layer of medicine on the wound until the entire right leg was tightly wrapped. Only then did the two of them hurriedly put the bamboo splint that they had prepared in advance on Niu Jianhu. Until now. Only then did Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao start to pant heavily. Zhang Feng glanced at the Turk. They didn't know when the Turk had completed his mission. The blood flowing out of his veins was also intermittent. Seeing this, Sun Simiao looked at Niu Jianhu's leg again. Only then did he hurriedly insert needles on his leg and chest again. Zhang Feng's eyes were also fixed on Niu Jianhu's leg that was constantly bleeding. Gradually, the bleeding stopped again. Seeing this, Sun Simiao pulled off the infusion tube on Niu Jianhu's body. After doing all this, the two of them basically sat down on the ground at the same time. Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao looked at each other, then hooked their fingers at Li Yuan. They pointed at the cigarette in his hand. Li Yuan rolled his eyes. He fumbled around in his arms and took out a pure gold cigarette box. He took out 2 cigarettes and handed them to the two of them. He asked, "This is it? This kid is fine?" Zhang Feng didn't say anything. After taking a few deep puffs of the cigarette, he stood up and glanced at Niu Jianhu. He then said, "Everyone, Brother Xiaohu's leg is saved. If there are no accidents, he will be able to walk on crutches in 2 months. In half a year, he will be able to walk on the ground." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but heave a deep sigh of relief. Even Yu Qigong was so excited that he shouted, "Beautiful! I knew you could do it. Old Niu, listen, King listen, your Xiaohu is fine." Niu Jinda had been listening carefully to all the sounds in the classroom, but he didn't dare to look. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng and Yu Qigong's words, his tense body trembled slightly. Yu Qigong put his arm around Niu Jinda's shoulder and laughed. "Old man, did you hear what Feng said? Your kid is fine. In half a year, your kid will be able to jump around again. Did you hear that?" "Haha." He heard it. Niu Jinda heard everything. Although he didn't dare to make a sound or look, it was his son lying inside after all. He was more concerned about his son's safety than anyone else. After all, his Niu family only had this one seedling. At this time, when he heard Yu Qigong's words, Niu Jinda grinned. He seemed to want to enter Zhang Feng, but for some reason his vision turned black and he slowly fell down again. Chapter 1156. At this time, everyone present began to think about what to do next. Although they had seen bone resetting, it was only a minor injury. Before coming, everyone had heard about this matter, but in everyone's opinion, this seemed to be a false rumor. After all, who could have a way to make such a serious broken bone on the street? Moreover, this bone stubble was exposed. Although before, there were indeed people who had heard about leg resetting and bone resetting, but the bones were not exposed and there were no red wounds. Brother Yong used a bamboo clip to pick him up, and after lying in bed for a year and a half, he could still walk with a limp, but this leg, it was basically a cripple. If he wanted to recover, it could only depend on whether he was sincere to God or not. But now, they heard that someone could use the blood of the Turks to exchange blood for blood and save a person who was already judged to be dead by the King of Hell. How could this not be miraculous? The most miraculous thing was that this person could actually put the leg bone that had been broken for at least 3 days on the street. Even if it was a piece of bone from a cow or sheep, if it was left outside for 3 days, it would have smelled so bad that it couldn't be smelled. How could it be reconnected? If this was not a miracle, then what was it? The most important thing was that the person really came back to life. Although he hadn't woken up yet because of the anesthetic soup and sleeping pills, everything seemed to be getting better after Dr. Sun's diagnosis. This was no longer a problem. The most important thing was that at this time, Sun Simiao didn't say anything. What qualifications did they have to speak? After Dr. Sun's 2 hours of observation and treatment, Sun Simiao finally breathed a sigh of relief. It's done. Quickly carry him to the old man's bamboo house. Within these 10 days, the old man will take care of him personally. No one is allowed to disturb him. It's done. It's really done. This is really a miracle. At this time, everyone's mind couldn't help but become lively. The most important thing was that once this thing was done, it meant that in the future, the broken leg would be as good as new? Kid, are you sure it's really done? Of course, Li Yuan was the first to be in disbelief. He waited for Zhang Feng to catch his breath before asking. Li Yuan was not the only one who had this question. Everyone present had it. Those who were able to come here today were definitely overlords of a region. Zhang Feng also understood the importance of Li Yuan's question. He nodded heavily and said, "It is indeed done." As he spoke, Zhang Feng swept his gaze around the room, before loudly announcing, "Allow me to keep you in suspense. Today's lesson is a medical lesson of our White Deer Institute. Actually, it's quite simple. Actually, you just have to deal with the patient's wound infection and disinfect it with this alcohol that I specially made. Pay attention to your physical hygiene." Zhang Feng explained in detail the physiology and hygiene, as well as those bacterial infections and so on. Otherwise, based on these people's thoughts of Brother Feng not regretting it until he hollowed out the city walls, he could forget about living a good life from now on. After he finished talking about this, Zhang Feng said while panting, "Actually, this blood transfusion is not the kind of blood for life technique that you all understand. For example, if the water in a ditch dries up, the land in the field will also dry up. At this time, isn't the best method for us to carry water for irrigation? Similarly, at the end of the day, what little tiger lacks the most is blood. Once the body loses serious blood, if blood is not transfused, even if a deity comes, it will be impossible to save the situation. But this blood can't be used just any blood," Zhang Feng hurriedly added. "Otherwise, if this group of old fellows really went back and got someone to draw blood from, wouldn't that be a huge sin?" Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "People who need blood transfusions are usually in a situation like little tigers, or those who have suffered serious external injuries and lost too much blood. Also, there are those who have been poisoned by poisonous snakes and need blood transfusions. In this kind of situation, you only need to find a serum and use this set of medical tools that I use. After receiving reasonable training, you can use it. Under normal circumstances, the amount of blood in a person's body is only enough to fill a basin." Hearing this, Li Yuan pointed at the Turkic man on the shelf who had long lost his vital signs and said, "Then what happened to him? Didn't we just draw all his blood? If this isn't blood for life, then what is?" Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. "This is a little special. Let's put it this way. Actually, in total, we drew less than 3 bowls of blood from him. It's just that this guy was scared to death. After all, anyone who doesn't know about this situation will have such a situation. So, we still have to be careful when drawing blood. Also, if the blood type doesn't match, it can also kill people. So, the best way is to use the blood drip method to identify relatives. However, this method is not strict. It can only measure whether the blood type of 2 people matches. It has nothing to do with a paternity test. The blood identification method that you all talked about, in my opinion, is all nonsense. You must not take it seriously. If you don't believe me, old you also saw that little tiger has nothing to do with this Turkic man. So, we have to be careful." Chapter 1157. After sending off this group of gods of plague and explaining the medical matters clearly to this group of uncles, Zhang Feng dragged his tired body back to Sun Simiao's bamboo house. In the bamboo house, Yu Shernan and the other three had been waiting there for a long time. Zhang Feng knew that he couldn't avoid this, but he didn't want to. After all, the appearance of a new thing, if it didn't experience the wind and rain, then what was it? As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng told Sun Simiao about the daily disinfection of the room, as well as some common knowledge, after finishing the book. Only then did he pull Yu Shernan, Li Yuan, and the others to Li Yuan's small bamboo house unwillingly. However, when they walked out of the small bamboo house, Niu Jinda was already waiting there. When he saw Zhang Feng, he knelt down with a thud. "Fengzi, you are the savior of my Niu family." When Zhang Feng heard that, his expression changed instantly. He didn't even turn his head, didn't even look at Niu Jinda, and was about to enter the small bamboo house. Seeing this, Yu Qigong hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng and said, "Fengzi, just let him speak. You don't know old Niu's temper. 3 generations of ancestors only had one son, and didn't I say before, when we were in the army for a few years, old Niu can't have children now because of other reasons." "So," Yu Qigong said painfully, "you don't have a son, but when you get married and have children in the future, I dare to guarantee that even if you have to sacrifice your life, you will not hesitate to save your son, right?" Zhang Feng was silent. He could understand a father's fatherly love. But, with a sigh, Zhang Feng came to Niu Jinda's side helplessly and also knelt in front of Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda was so scared that he hurriedly lifted Zhang Feng's knees, his whole body trembling. "Fengzi, are you trying to torture me? If you don't think I deserve it, why can't Lao Tzu do the same? Lao Tzu said that we're brothers. We're also brothers with Xiao Hu and the others. What's our relationship? You're someone who's only missing a stick of incense and you're going to kowtow to Lao Tzu? Have you ever treated Lao Tzu as a brother? You don't even treat Lao Tzu as a brother. Since you want to be estranged, let's see who's more estranged." This, Niu Jinda's face was bitter. At this moment, Li Yuan's eyes flickered as he looked at Niu Jinda and said, "Get up, the ground is cold, your rheumatic leg problem is also not light, and you still don't know, right? Because of your son, Fengzi hasn't had a good night's sleep these days." Niu Jinda was shocked when he heard this. He raised his eyes and saw that Zhang Feng's face was extremely haggard, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was instantly at a loss of what to do. "This, brother..." Niu Jinda was so anxious that tears came out. Only then did Yu Qigong smooth things over. "Old Niu, with a brother, why are you still so polite? It would be strange if Fengzi was willing to do this. Moreover, Fengzi said before that other than the parents of heaven and earth, no one can kneel. Have you forgotten? Go to the mountain gate and read the commandments of the academy." "All right, get up. Old man and the others still have important things to discuss with Fengzi. If you have something on your mind, doesn't Fengzi like those strange things? Go and get some for him as repayment. Usually I don't see you being so wishy-washy." Li Yuan urged impatiently. He almost spat out a mouthful of saliva. Fortunately, he reacted in time and disturbed him. Yu Qigong was also shocked. Regardless of Niu Jinda, he hurriedly hugged him and dragged him away. The retired emperor was angry. After sending Niu Jinda away with great difficulty, they returned to the bamboo house. They could understand Niu Jinda's mood. After all, that was his only son. How could he not care? No one would. At this time, after they sat down, Li Yuan said, "Kid, do you know what it means to make it public today?" "I know." Zhang Feng nodded firmly. "This is also specially done." Chu Suiliang frowned slightly and said, "Old man, I heard that you gave your property to these people? And after this mid-autumn hunt, you invited them up the mountain for this?" Zhang Feng nodded without hesitation. There were no outsiders here. Therefore, Zhang Feng did not hide anymore. Hearing this, Ouyang Sun coldly said, "Brat, you're playing with fire. Aren't you afraid that the wolf will turn around and eat you when it gets fat?" Zhang Feng laughed and said, "That depends on whether the bait on my fishing rod is tempting enough." Li Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. "Kid, in the previous life, Erlang came to you for this matter?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Indeed, and I asked him to come. Kid, you know what I'm doing now. Didn't those people with the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs and Guanlong want to do something to me? Then I'll have a fight between the sandpiper and the clam. Won't that be great? Chapter 1158. Zhang Feng was indeed playing a big game this time. If he succeeded, the 5 surnames and 7 hopes would be nothing. Moreover, he knew that Old Li definitely wouldn't be able to handle this matter. With Old Li's personality and industrial power, if he were to fight with any of the families in Guanlong, they would be able to crush him to death with just a flick of their fingers. The best way was to go to the emperor. Only with the emperor as his backing would he have the capital to challenge the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Those aristocratic families had been able to survive for hundreds and thousands of years by accumulating strength bit by bit. Although there was no lack of indifference, it did not mean that they were brainless. Therefore, this trap had to be set bit by bit. For example, the promotion of basketball, football, and morning exercises. Although it seemed that Zhang Feng did not gain any benefits, the production of football and basketball was still in Zhang Feng's hands. Even if others wanted to do it, they would have to get his permission. Otherwise, why would the matter of basketball be handed over to the county government? This was all thought out long ago. If something went wrong, it would be a direct confrontation between the government and these people. In the face of huge benefits, these people would not be so foolish. Moreover, as long as there were some basketball competitions in the future, Zhang Feng would personally train some players. In this competition, they would be invincible. How could the name of White Deer College, Zhang Feng's team, not be resounding? This meant that these people were helping Zhang Feng spread the name of the college. Moreover, Zhang Feng did nothing. Moreover, the braised meat would spread sooner or later. Du Lele was not as good as everyone else. If he did not promote something well, then it would be nothing. Moreover, Zhang Feng did not expect these things to make money. What he coveted was the 5 surnames and 7 hopes property, and the Guanlong group's property. As long as he could trip these 2 behemoths, how much could he eat? Perhaps the richest person in the world would be Zhang Feng. Moreover, this was also a political achievement. When these 2 mountains were defeated by him, not only would he be a Grand Duke, but he would also be ranked first in the Lingyan Pavilion, and even the king who had always been side by side. It would not be a problem. Given the hatred the current emperor had for these aristocratic families, the sky was already completely dark. However, Zhang Feng and the others were still thinking about their future policy. Yu Shernan and the others were sometimes surprised repeatedly, sometimes frowning in contemplation. At least half of the beard on Li Yuan's chin was shaved bald. The more he listened, the more excited he felt. Who would be willing to be suppressed by the Guanlong Shi clan and the 5 clans and 7 Wangs? As for getting rid of these big clans and being able to truly witness all the imperial power of the Tang dynasty falling into the hands of the Li royal family, Li Yuan was also more and more excited at this time. He even urged him to give up the 10% shares of the paper mill. In the end, Zhang Feng sternly refused. "Old master, we have to keep some stock in our hands and keep it attractive. For example, this medicine, the paper mill, the forging workshop, the salt-making workshop, the rubber factory, and the textile factory. These are the foundation of whether we can destroy them in the future or not. If one of these falls into their hands, think about it, what attraction do we have? Humans are greedy like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. When they can't get what they want, they will try their best to get it. Now, these industries are all in a watertight situation. Once they tear a hole in it, think about the result. Although I still have a backup plan in the future, once the canal is opened, the initiative will not be in our hands. Now we want to give them meat to eat. They have it. When the time comes, it will be the meat in our hands. We have to think about how to give it out." Traction. Li Yuan and the others could not help but feel shocked. They were very suspicious about what Zhang Feng was thinking about, but they also knew that this kid was really annoyed by Guanlong's people during this period of time. From the immortal ointment to the surveillance during the mid-autumn hunt, anyone would be scared, let alone this scheming kid. "Well, everyone, I'm really tired these days. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first." When Zhang Feng saw that his children were deep in thought, he couldn't help but ask. He hurriedly got up and asked, But when he saw that no one responded, he ran away. Among people, especially that old man Li, it was impossible for Zhang Feng to guard against his cunning ways. He didn't dare to stay here any longer. If he did, then all the ink in his stomach would be taken away. How could he not know what these people wanted? They just wanted to ask him about the medical science, the operation, and the blood transfusion method. If Zhang Feng could explain it clearly, then he would not be here. He would have gone to the Imperial Academy of Medicine long ago. When Zhang Feng went out, his legs seemed to be filled with lead and could not be dragged. At the same time, in the depths of the palace, in Li Shimin's bedroom, at this time, a spy also showed everything that happened on the mountain today to Li Shimin. The ox saw the tiger's leg. It was done. This was, without a doubt, a great piece of news. At this time, Li Shimin could not help frowning slightly and sighing. Feng Zi was really careless this time. Chapter 1159. After Empress Zhang's son instructed Li Tai, she asked someone to send him back. Then she asked, "Second brother, what's wrong with Prince Zhang?" Li Shimin sighed and handed the secret letter to Empress Zhangson. "Guanyin maid, read it and tell me what Feng Zi is thinking. The day before yesterday, he told me that he wanted to deal with these people. But this time, I don't understand. I don't know what he is thinking." Empress Zhang's son read the contents of the secret letter and couldn't help but feel surprised. According to young Master Zhang's style, coupled with the fact that these people have been targeting young Master Zhang recently, I feel that second brother shouldn't pay too much attention to the subtle matters. Why? Li Shimin didn't understand and asked. Empress Zhang's son smiled and said, "Second brother, don't you understand? Prince Zhang and the people of the Guanlong 5 surnames and 7 hopes were so enthusiastic at the beginning. If your majesty has too much contact with them, everyone will think that you and Prince Zhang are plotting something. What do you think will happen to the 5 surnames and 7 hopes? I think Prince Zhang did a good job. After all, only with a sense of mystery and temptation can the relationship between second brother and Prince Zhang fade. In addition, if second brother and Prince Zhang quarrel over this matter, it will be wonderful." Quarrel? Li Shimin was slightly stunned. But after a while, he suddenly understood. "I understand." Li Shimin laughed and said, "After tomorrow morning, I will go up the mountain again. You'd better not go anywhere. Tomorrow morning, there will be people talking about today's matter. Second brother, you only need to deny it." Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but smile. Guanyin maid knows me best. However, it would be even better if Imperial Father could say a thing or two on the mountain. At night, news of Zhang Feng's life-prolonging blood transfusion method and his miraculous medical skills had already spread like wildfire in Chang, and at night, it was even more miraculous. At this time, in Qing Yaojin's mansion, Zhang's son Wuji, Wei Zheng, and the others were already sitting in a circle. They were just about to go to the palace to see the emperor, but the reply they got was that the emperor was angry and he didn't want to see anyone at this time. The emperor probably didn't know why they wanted to see the emperor. That was to say, what Zhang Feng did today made the emperor angry. At this time, they didn't understand what the emperor and Zhang were doing. They also didn't know what on earth to them. After all, the emperor seemed to know this matter. But now, it was so obvious that, is the emperor really angry? That's not right. Everyone couldn't help but look serious again. Finally, Wei Zheng looked at Yuqi Gong and said, "Yuqi, you know the most during this time. Tell me, what's going on?" And Fengzi wouldn't do such a thing because of this matter. So, I think this is a trap set by the emperor and Fengzi? At this time, everyone was silent again. They weren't fools. Who was Zhang Feng? He was smart and cunning. Wouldn't he know the consequences of what he was doing now? He knew better than anyone else. So, it was too early to say anything now. They discussed for more than 2 hours, but just as it was about to end, little Gizi, wearing a big black robe and holding a gold medal, rushed into Qing Yaojin's living room. Little Gizi was wrapped up so tightly that no one could see his face, but everyone recognized the gold medal in his hand. They hurriedly got up, and little Gizi took off his hood and said with a smile, "Little Gizi greets the Guogongs." Little Gizi, we're so familiar with each other. If you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to be so polite. Wei Zheng hurriedly smiled, but his smile was somewhat unreadable. Seeing this, little Gizi didn't beat around the bush. He took out a bamboo tube and handed it to Wei Zheng, saying, "This is the emperor's order. So, the Guogongs should do what you should do. It's best if you don't care about this matter. It's best if you make things difficult for that kid. Now, the emperor's order is to focus on preparing the forging workshop and the firearms. As for the rest, it's up to Prince Zhang to play by himself." Play by himself, everyone's expression froze. They didn't know what the emperor and Zhang Feng were up to. Even if you were beaten to death, you could tell that the emperor wanted Zhang Feng to solve it by himself, diverting everyone's attention from the front to the back. It seemed that this was the only way to explain the situation at this time. Wei Zheng and the others frowned and muttered for a while, then cupped their fists and said, "I'll have to trouble Gonggong to tell the emperor that we understand." Little Gizi heard this and nodded. The emperor actually understands everything. As for General Niu, I hope you can enlighten him. The emperor will reward the Chang and military camp tomorrow morning. He also wants to see this new training method. You know, as he spoke, little Gizi put the cloak on his head again and cupped his fists, saying, "Okay, I won't disturb you anymore to avoid too many eyes. I'll take my leave." Chapter 1160. Dong. The morning bell rang on time. Usually, at this time, no one in Chang and city would have woken up or gone out. However, since the appearance of the football match and the morning exercise, no one in Chang and city held a teapot for a walk. Instead, they went out for exercise in groups. Chang and University also opened its doors. All the students opened their doors and ran around Chang and city for exercise. The citizens naturally followed behind them and ran slowly. What was this? This was a trend. The Imperial College and Hongwenguan, as well as those high-ranking officials and dignitaries, were all trying their best to learn. Don't ask why. It was because this thing was created by Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng, godly Dr. Sun Simiao, and the four great scholars of Chang and city had spent many years reading books. A genius like Zhang Feng had wasted many years in a small pub to create this thing. At this moment, White Deer Academy was basically considered to be a gathering place for those mystical things. Not to mention the rare building method, just the facilities of the academy, and the series of earth-shattering things that appeared, made it impossible to find any fault even if you wanted to. Chang and University was definitely the first place that White Deer College promoted these things in Chang and city. Although the public couldn't go to White Deer College, they only had to look at Chang and University to know what White Deer College had done during this period of time. In addition, the Directorate of Imperial College and the Hongwen building were also present. Previously, everyone only knew that these two were not on good terms with Zhang Feng. However, ever since they saw this plaything at the autumn hunt, they were truly amazing. They all went to White Deer College in Shao Mountain to observe. That was not all. After watching a morning exercise, the libation lords of the two academies hurriedly drove the students of the academies down the mountain. Don't ask why. Because if these students were to stay here for another 2 hours, then the two academies, he would only be left with the awkward situation of being a teacher. After that, for some reason, the two of them actually begged Zhang Feng for the morning exercises, basketball, and even the football. Although this was said by the people of Tong Hui Fong. However, in Chang'an City, the people of Tonghui Lane had become the most dazzling neighborhood in Chang'an City. They were also one of the most important channels for people to get to know more about the mountain. 121. 134. 121. As the horns sounded at the door, the people of Chang, and who had been waiting at the door hurriedly followed behind the students and began to run. It was as if they were competing with each other. At first, Chang and University was the only big university. In the end, Imperial College and Hongwen Guan joined in. Good Lord, these two universities were even more aggressive than Chang and University. They ran from dawn to the last quarter of an hour before stopping. Their roars seemed to be announcing that this thing belonged to them. They even suppressed the roars of Chang and University. In the end, Zhang Shan of Eason Pastry, who was Zhang Feng's future father-in-law, and the old village chief of Tonghui Lane, raised their arms and called for the people of Tonghui Lane to join in. Naturally, The people of Hongwen and Imperial College were defeated. However, they didn't lose their temper. If it were anyone else, these two universities would definitely curse them to death. However, one of them was Zhang Feng's father-in-law, and the other was Zhang Feng's neighbor. They could not afford to offend them. Every time they started from Chang'an University, they would go around the Vermilion Bird Gate, and then to the illustrious Virtue Gate. After passing through the two cities, they would stop at the entrance of Zhang Feng's tavern for a while. This was the main point. In the end, they decided to start from the 16 royal cities and focus on Zhang Feng's tavern. Only then did Chang'an city not fall into chaos. Moreover, this order came from the palace. Obviously, this had been tacitly approved by the emperor. What was this? If they did not King run, how could they face the emperor? How could they face the people of Chang'an city? At this time, the officials who were attending the court did not dare to sit in the sedan chairs, because they were flustered. Although those people who were running did not say anything, they still looked at their sedan chairs or horses and greeted them. They always felt that these people were greeting their ancestors. In the end, Cheng Yaojin had no choice but to take the initiative to pull Wei Zheng and the others to run to the court. This time, it was serious. How could they not go when the Duke had already gone to attend the imperial court? Could it be that they were more powerful than the Duke? So at this time, there was a spectacular scene of first-grade officials and ordinary people going out to run together every day with the morning bell as a signal. At this time, the foreign officials stationed in Chang'an could not help but be completely dumbfounded. They stared at all this in Chang'an and mistakenly thought that the Tang dynasty had entered the stage where all the people were soldiers. How could this be? How the F***ck could this be? As the information was sent out of the Tang dynasty and into the hands of the monarchs of various countries, all the countries were shocked. And this Chang'an was the capital of the Tang dynasty. How could the wind and grass here not let those who wanted to make achievements and climb up not see the light of hope? In particular, the Imperial College and the Hongwen Library were established in almost every state in the Tang dynasty. This was an advantage for them. After all, no matter how powerful Chang'an University and White Deer College were, they only had one library in Chang'an city. At this time, if they took the lead to seize resources, the people would say that the things that did not belong to them were theirs. And this was one of their achievements. This was something that the emperor acquiesced to. Look at Chang'an city. It was no longer as lazy as before. It made one's face flush with excitement. Later, because of the matter of basketball and football, the basic Kuju team changed their profession early. They worked harder than anyone else to learn Kuju. This was something that they would have to rely on in the future. In addition, Director Zhang Feng's promise was still there. If they won the championship of every season, they could get Zhang Feng's promise. Now, everything that Zhang Feng did was extremely enviable. As long as he revealed a little bit of it, it was enough for them to eat for a lifetime. At this time, as the running team slowly grew, three forces were basically formed in Chang'an city. One was formed by the people spontaneously. The other was the students of the three academies. The other was the Kuju team and the ministers in the imperial court. This made Li Shimin and Li Yuan, who were standing on the Vermilion Bird Gate and watching, very surprised. "Father, will there be a problem?" Li Shimin said with some shock. On the contrary, Li Yuan laughed and said, "What problem can there be? Our Li family is known for practicing martial arts. Second young master, haven't you always been criticized for being born in the military?" This move of Zhang Feng's has simply flattened this matter from the root. Li Shimin heard this and his eyes flashed. "You mean, let the whole people participate?" "Wrong. Do you still remember the teaching philosophy that Feng Zi mentioned before?" Li Shimin really forgot about this matter. At this time, he thought carefully and remembered. "Are you talking about military management?" "Yes." Li Yuan smiled and stroked his beard. "Now you should still remember that Zhang Feng's training method is still in progress in the army, right? Yesterday, after coming down from Mount Shao, this emperor went to take a look personally. The running team was exactly the same. Apart from the difference between the morning exercise and the military training, everything else was exactly the same. In this case, if everyone participated in it, Li Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Li Shimin. So what if the whole people are soldiers? This is for the good of the people. Let them always remember how our Tang dynasty started. What's wrong with this? Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but nod. I understand. Regarding the Li clan's imperial family being born and practicing martial arts, not only Li Yuan, it was also a huge mountain that Li Shimin was shouldering on his back. On top of that, the crime of murdering his brother and forcing the abdication was added. Right now, forget about the fact that Li Shimin had accomplished so many meritorious deeds, he was still a sinner. Although his father still forgave him, this was still a reason for those people in the court to target him. But now, this Zhang Feng really helped him a lot. This also made Li Shimin feel a little ashamed to face Zhang Feng. What? You can't help but tell that kid your identity? Li Yuan glanced at Li Shimin and said. Li Shimin didn't speak, but looked at the students and people roaring under the gate tower and nodded. Indeed, I always feel a little ashamed to face him like this. Li Yuan smiled. He laughed and said, It's up to you, but I think it's not the time now. Let's wait until these two big mountains are taken down from the Tang dynasty. After all, at this time, letting him stand out is not helping him, but harming him. What do you think? Okay, I'll wait here. It's time to go to court. Li Shimin opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he still couldn't say anything. He smacked his lips, made a gesture, and retreated down the city wall of Zhuke Gate. In the political announcement hall. At this time, many ministers were so tired that they were panting like oxen, squatting on the ground with flushed faces, or sitting on the court panting. But everyone's spirit was more than ever. At least, at this time, everyone's face was flushed, and they were full of energy. Although the group of civil officials were panting like windmills, they still gathered together to discuss something. They even looked at Zhang Sun Wuji and others from time to time. As for Zhang Sun Wuji, Qing Yaojin, and the others, although they were a little out of breath, their statuses were still there after all. It was not good for them to say anything. They forced themselves to hold on, straightened their backs, and listened carefully to what the ministers were saying. This made the two old men, Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui, suffer. At this time, they wanted to sit down and rest, but their identities didn't match and it was inappropriate. But if they didn't sit down, their legs would be numb, not to mention how uncomfortable it was. At this time, little Gizi glanced at everyone indifferently. Everyone hurriedly got up from the ground, thinking that the emperor was going to court, but little Gizi said indifferently, The emperor has decreed that from today on, all ministers will be rewarded with a futon, and you are allowed to kneel. This time, everyone couldn't help but boil up. This was simply a great favor bestowed by the heavens. Everyone hurriedly bowed, and the white jade in their hands couldn't stop trembling. Thank you, Your Majesty. In the midst of everyone's cheers, the little eunuchs had already rushed out of the political announcement hall, and orderly took out a futon and placed it behind everyone's buttocks. The ministers looked at the futon and wanted to sit down. But without the emperor's permission, they didn't dare to. After the futon was distributed, little Gizi retreated to the side of the dragon throne and said loudly, The emperor is here. Immediately, the ministers hurriedly tidied up their clothes, and then respectfully greeted. Li Shimin was very happy today because just now, he could say that he saw these ministers still stride into the political announcement hall. Although this formation looked a little out of place, it was a good start. Welcome, Your Majesty. No need for formalities, please take a seat. Li Shimin waved his hand, but he didn't climb the 8-step stairway to heaven. Instead, he stood in front of everyone with his hands behind his back, and said with a smile, Today's matter, I have seen it with my own eyes, I am very pleased. Everyone was surprised. Although most of them were unwilling, they couldn't help but be on tenterhooks when they heard that the emperor was secretly observing them. However, Li Shimin didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he smiled and waved his hand to signal everyone to sit down, but before he could speak, Wei Zheng hurriedly said, Your Majesty, this old minister thinks it's inappropriate. Li Shimin smiled faintly and said, Let's hear it, what's inappropriate? Your Majesty, since ancient times, there has been a difference between the monarch and his ministers. Since the Han dynasty, there has been a change in the etiquette system between the monarch and his ministers. From the beginning of the previous dynasty, the difference between the monarch and his ministers was even more prominent. This is very useful, at least it can highlight the etiquette between the monarch and his ministers. Prime Minister Wei, you might as well say it in detail. Li Shimin waved his hand and said. Hearing this, Wei Zheng hurriedly knelt and said, Since ancient times, when has there been an emperor standing, but the hundreds of officials in the hall are sitting? This is not in accordance with the etiquette system. If your majesty just feels that the officials have worked hard today, I can understand, but... Hearing this, a few of the officials also thought it over. Li Shimin stroked his beard, came to Wei Zheng's side, and sat cross-legged on the ground. The officials were so scared that they hurriedly knelt on the ground. What about now? Now that I'm sitting, can you sit down? Li Shimin looked at Wei Zheng, who was kneeling in front of him with a smile, and personally helped him up, then said, In the laws of the Tang dynasty, is there anything I can't change? In my opinion, this thing is actually just a formality. Some people are wholeheartedly thinking about the Tang dynasty, but I know what other people are thinking in their hearts. You all know. Therefore, Prime Minister Wei, you don't have to talk about the etiquette system anymore. I've made up my mind. While speaking, Li Shimin stood up with Wei Zheng's help and said, This so-called morning exercise and the 8th set of radio gymnastics were done very well. I've decided I'll immediately issue an edict. Li Shimin waved his big sleeves, then walked up the 8-step stairway to heaven, and sat on the dragon throne, and said, I've decided, from today onwards, starting from the imperial palace, whether it's the harem or the Minister of Internal Affairs, as long as they're not on duty, everyone must do morning exercises when the morning bell rings. Otherwise, if you don't do morning exercises more than 3 times a month, your salary for that month will be deducted. Little Geezy, I'll leave this matter to you inside the imperial palace. As for outside the imperial palace, I've decided to leave it to the crown prince. Wei Jing, Zhang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and the others will assist in supervising the morning exercises of all the ministers. When everyone heard this, their hearts trembled. This time they're doomed. This old life will be completely lost. However, just as Wei Zheng and the others were about to receive the edict, a minister hurriedly stepped out and said, Your Majesty, Qin Yuben wants to submit a memorial. Li Shimin glanced at the person who came and snorted coldly, but he still waved his hand and said, Allow. During this time, His Highness the Crown Prince hasn't left the imperial court. At this time, the officials have already been talking about it. I hope Your Majesty can make a clear judgment. If this goes on for a long time, I'm afraid there will be chaos in the imperial court. Li Shimin smiled faintly. Then what do you think? That minister hurriedly said, Your Majesty, this old subject has heard rumors before. Although the Crown Prince and the others are in charge of White Deer College and did do some things in the beginning, this is what the Crown Prince should do. However, if he doesn't come to the imperial court because of this small matter, isn't that a little, simply ridiculous? Official Wang, everyone has seen what White Deer College has done during this time. I'm sure Official Wang's house still has a large amount of white paper, right? If the Crown Prince wasn't in charge of this on the mountain alone, would you use such good white paper? Also, this braised meat. I heard that Official Wang's concubine wanted to eat braised meat, so she stole your family's food and gave it to your son. In the end, you broke her legs. Is this true? Qingya, you're maliciously slandering me. Cheng Yaojin smiled coldly and ignored that person. Instead, he cupped his hands and said to Li Shimin, Your Majesty, the truth of this matter has been spread all over the streets of Cheng. Moreover, all the officials present should know what kind of person this Wang Qinggong is. He is really a stingy person. Cheng Yaojin, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Old man has no enmity with you. Why did you injure the old man so severely? Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this old subject. Hearing this, the group of old subjects who didn't want to speak couldn't sit still anymore. They all shouted angrily, Qingyang, this is the imperial court. You're speaking such filthy words and publicly slandering an official. How should you be punished? Cheng Yaojin, you're simply despicable. Do you think that people won't know you're running to White Deer College every day? Surnamed Cheng, does old man have to report you to His Majesty for having ulterior motives? Li Shimin looked at the crowd indifferently and didn't say anything. When Cheng Yaojin and the others saw this, they couldn't help but understand something. Cheng Yaojin became even more furious. He put his hands on his hips and glared at the group of civil officials and started scolding them. The generals on Cheng Yaojin's side also found a rare opportunity to angrily scold them for being fake refined. The morning exercises and running exercises were all from White Deer College. They had just heard them say that these exercises were good for the country and the people. Now they were saying that these exercises were smelly dog shit. One of the generals couldn't help but jointly request, "Your Majesty, these people simply don't put Your Majesty and the Crown Prince in their eyes. It's simply a waste of food to keep such people in the imperial court. We don't want to be associated with them." That's right, Your Majesty. These people clearly know about the Crown Prince's great achievements, but they just don't mention it. They're just grabbing onto the Crown Prince's weak points. What is their intention? The civil officials, especially Wang Qinggong, were secretly shocked. When he saw Li Shimin frowning and thinking about how to end this matter, he hurriedly scolded, "Cheng Yaojin, old man suspects that you did it on purpose." Cheng Yaojin glared, "Lao Tzu did it on purpose. What's wrong? Come and bite me."